Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be starting momentarily. I'll wait for all council members and participants to join in the attendees list, and I will bring you in one by one once we have a complete roster. Okay, we're just missing Councilman Winarski and Councilman Key, so I'm going to start bringing people in, and then Council President Brzezinski, if you could take over from there.
Hello.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Councilman Brennan, it sounds like your headphones there, your laptop has a rocket ship perhaps taken off. I don't know. It might be the fan.
I'll try to take up my headphones then.
That seemed to have fixed that issue.
You fix it? Okay, great.
Ed, can you
Hey.
tell us if Mike and Jim are available?
Jim's having some difficulty logging on. Frank may want to give him a call.
Thank
Will
you.
do.
They're gonna call you, partner.
Good, thank you.
All right.
So we got everybody else?
Yeah, I think everybody else is on.
Good.
I could
Don't
only
let me
see
in.
3
Don't let me
folks
be your,
at this time.
Hold up.
I just want to say that we will not be having a finance meeting at this meeting. There has been some mail delays and the finance department has been very busy managing grant reconciliations and making sure the bills get paid and mail being slow, and there's some staffing challenges with COVID, and they're not quite ready to give us the end of the year report. And we have Lisa on board with us today if you have any questions, and Ed Williams with us as well. I was able to get in touch with Paul, and we should be able to have that all taken care of with a finance meeting on Wednesday, the first council meeting of the month in February. I also wanted to address the resolution that we have a 2% discount that will carry through before the April 30th, and then have the face amount till the end of July, so that if a person doesn't pay then at the face value after August 1st there, then it would go to the 10% penalty. I know that's not much of a break, but it does give us the incentive to the people to have it done if they can before that time with the 2% through April 30th, like we did last year, and then extending the face value a month. So if anyone has any questions, thank you, Ed, for letting me approach everyone at this time. And we have Lisa and Ed Williams should be on as well.
No problem. Does anybody have any questions?
No, sir. I think Kathy did a good job in doing the research with Ed and the finance department. One question, did Paul come out with 2 knees or they left one there?
I think he's doing well.
Oh, okay.
He said he's walking around a little bit. But he
Yeah.
didn't want to go ice skating when I asked him though.
Oh, no. I've been there. It's a long recovery period.
Yeah, it is.
I just thank Kathy also. And I also want to remind my colleagues, though, that I also did research on this. I sent you memos on what the city, county, and school district policies are normally on taxes. And I also summed up for you what those taxing bodies did last year, including what the city of Erie did. And I think that that's important to keep in mind because we did, make those changes last year. So, and I saw that somebody in some of the correspondence had said something about, well, the county has a tax increase, which, yes, that was in the information I provided to you. The school district, which is supposed to raise taxes every year under the state's financial recovery plan, opted not to when they passed their budget in June. But I also want to remind people that don't tell us, the county's raising taxes as if that gives them a special dispensation to, make it a little easier to pay taxes this year. The county tax burden is much smaller than the city and the school district tax burden. Unless somebody else has some other kind of property taxes that I'm not aware of. I know that that's the case for me. So, thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you very much. I forgot to mention all your hard work in helping me. I really didn't mean to leave that out. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you very much for all the information that I received. It was interesting, very interesting. I thank you very much.
Kathy, I know you weren't leaving me out. I just, I'm still thinking about the comment about, how I'm a fast learner. And that is stuck in my craw. So it's not that I'm a fast learner, it's that I always do my homework.
Ordinance?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Ed, that's on
Excuse me, is Ed on? Ed Betza? Lori has a question about the resolution that we might have to turn it into a ordinance for first reading. I don't have any problem with it. We just have to get some legalese from Edward when he comes on. He's not on yet. Okay. He had probably got tied up. He had promised it. Well, we have a minute. Just like to remind everybody that we will be working with Robert's Rules of Order. If anybody, including me, want to speak, you ask the chairman for the floor, and you can have, excuse me, you can have it. Otherwise, there's a possibility you would be muted. Thank you. Any other comments for the good?
Mr. Chairman, are you going to be doing the muting?
Yes, I am.
And you know how to do that?
Yes, I do.
Is Michael on yet? I wanted him in, if he's taking on our position where we have a moment of silence for, like we do. Today's a huge day in our history, obviously. Huge day with the inauguration.
Moment of silence for the huge day.
No, well, inauguration, but the peanut lady passed away, Annie Leinbach. I don't know how to pronounce her last name. Linebacha.
Yeah, I know who you mean. Yeah, I bought many peanuts from her on the way home from prep. Trying to get Mike hooked up. Any other comments for the good?
Mr. President, is Councilman Keys in chambers with you? And Gleason
He
State
is.
Chairman? Okay. I'm
He's
taking,
trying to get hooked up here.
Yeah, I'm hooking up Councilman Winarski right now, so he should be on momentarily.
Okay. He's dialing in. We should be live in a couple minutes here.
Council President, I will also let you know that we are streaming right now. So there is that going on.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Witherspoon, did you want to speak to your resolution?
Oh, there, I was muted.
Thank you.
No, I didn't. Gary Drapshaw was very active in our community, very, beyond the television sports. He showed up. Matter of fact, he was the only sports person that showed up regular to our basketball league. And our kids were very happy to see him, and they were really happy when they saw themselves on TV. And he was a very nice guy, very professional. And what we want to do for him, it's it's not a main street, but it's just something to remember him by.
Super. I know I had quite a bit to do with him when I was athletic director at East. He always put the kids first. Michael's having a hard time getting hooked up here. I had floated out an idea. You guys can play with it one way or the other. But with our caucuses and with our technology problematic at times, we really never get an honest chance to talk about the agenda. I was thinking about the idea of canceling the first and third Thursdays of our proposed study sessions and moving them to Tuesdays, the day before our meeting, which would give us a two-pronged type situation. If we needed 10 or 15 minutes or half an hour for the agenda, we could take it at the beginning. If there's something else that we would be studying, if it be cameras or with the police or whatever, we could do something like that. It gets frustrating when we, and it's nobody's fault, the fact that we're in a pandemic, it's tough to get communications through, and texting doesn't really work for me very well. I don't know about the rest of you. So again, for the good of the will of the board, I don't care one way or the other. I'm just trying to look for ways to make it better for all of us.
Mr. Chairman, once again, I want to remind the citizens that this is an idea. I didn't say Tuesday, but I did suggest that we use the Thursday study sessions as a committee of the whole to go over the agenda. I would like to get credit when I make suggestions. It is hard enough to be told that, hey, watch out, Liz, you're going to be muted. But
You weren't
to
told
literally
that.
be muted,
You're
I
gonna be
said,
muted in
Mr.
a second. You
Chairman,
start.
I said, Mr. Chairman, that I want credit when I do the work. I think moving it to a different day of the week would be a good idea. But please, women are silenced all the time, and especially in meetings. I'm not
And
talking about
more
city
than-
council
more than
meetings. I'm
willing to
talking
give you
about
the-
when women give ideas. I suggested that. I talked about it. I put it in my goals. Please don't take credit for something that somebody else did. Even it's fine to recraft it and present it, but give credit.
You know, I will give you credit. I will also tell you to read your text that I sent you to see what you thought about it. Your goal thing said Thursdays. All I wanted to do is move it to the day before the meeting. It's all yours. That's, if they do it, if they don't do it, I don't care one way or the other. If they do it, it's your credit. What else you want credit for? I'll give it to you. I really know how hard you work. I read all the goals that you put down there. And you know what? We all agree. We want the best for the city, Liz. And that's where we're at. And Michael's still trying to get hooked up, huh?
Mr. President, I'm
Yep.
willing to collaborate as much as possible this year. So we had a lot of ideas, and I'm sure you have a lot of things that we had sent you, our goals. So there's a lot to cover this year. Thank you.
Yeah, oh, definitely. And the thing I found out, and when I read them all and compared them, we're all on the same page. We all want what's best for the city. That's really the bottom line. That's why we're here. So working together, I don't want credit for anything. You can have credit for everything from everything. I don't care. It's not about credit here. Just like, I don't have anything else to say about that, but Kathy, working together, we can make a lot of things happen. Pulling the rope two different directions won't get us anyplace. That's my
President?
only comment. David,
Mr.
what do you
President?
need?
Yes, I've just wondered, I know I put it in my email, but how do we want to go about kind of deciding how to prioritize that list? Because I know you have plenty of emails to review, to look at it. How did you want to go about prioritizing and kind of see what's rises to the top of all our priorities?
I think that everybody should look at everybody's and find out where our commonalities are. And you know, a lot of them are there. We're in the same place. Maybe we need to, yeah, Mr. Witherspoon.
I think that would be a good topic for a study session.
Exactly.
And we should be able to come out with a 1 through 10, if that be the case. And, you know,
Which ones
discussing.
to tackle first? Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I think Liz did it last year or year before last. I don't remember, but she did put some stuff on a flip chart, you know, and so, you know, we can have the city clerk put it on the flip chart while we talk and discuss. and agree to disagree, but come up with something at the end of the day. And once we lay that out, then we have to put subtitles on a timetable, how we're going to do it. Can we do it? How much the administration need to be involved with each one? Because we can't do it. We're lawmakers. So that I would say a study session just for that and nothing else.
I think that's an excellent idea. David has that spreadsheet idea, which would put us right into what you were saying there. So again, we're all on the same page. I think everybody knows number one is the budget. We know that. And the
Yeah,
other thing is,
Mr. President,
yes,
I was also going to say, yeah, that spreadsheet, and again, I think it'd be a great idea if we, once we prioritize this, put it down on paper. And then like Mr. Witherspoon said, you know, there's a lot of details involved with these and how we attain them. And I don't know if we create committees to try to resolve some of them, but, you know, what administrative assistance do we need? What is required? You know, if we could put that on the spreadsheet and try to figure out, it would just kind of keep all our ideas together. So thank you.
that's a good idea, definitely.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I'd like to ask Dave, what font did you use?
What font?
Yeah, what font did you use?
It's a little difficult to read.
Did it come up different or?
Oh, mine came out like it was below 8 font. I mean, it was tiny.
Oh,
Even
sorry.
my magnifying glass didn't help very much.
I'll make a big one for you. I'm sorry. That wasn't the intention. I think I scanned it or something. It was some crazy. Sorry. I apologize.
Yeah, no problem.
I would like to have a little comment about Liz's idea of getting rid of those 2 Thursdays and making them Tuesdays. So we're not going to add any more meetings, but we'll have a meeting, we'll have a study session before the agenda the following day. I think it's a good idea, but again, I'm one. We need 7 to
Well.
do that. I'd like to look at it. It's up to you. If you guys want to do it, we can start doing it in February. And maybe that first Tuesday in February, do the goal thing. Any comments, Liz?
I actually, when I suggested that, I was thinking about how the school board has always used committee of the whole to prepare. I think the only issue might be if going to Tuesday, you know, we advertise our study sessions in advance at the beginning of the year, which is why we're always able to schedule Thursday study sessions, but close to the meeting, I think would be a good idea. Is Ed Betts on here and Lori? I think we would have to re-advertise in the spirit of transparency to move those meetings, but I think it's
correct.
A good idea.
You wouldn't need to advertise.
Right. And we just cancel the first and third Thursdays and make every first and third Tuesday a conditional or a needed study session, if that's the way. If you want to write that up, Liz, and I'll second it for you.
For tonight or for?
Probably our next meeting, but it's we can start moving forward with it. I don't think we need a resolution to do that, do we? Edward, do we need a resolution to change those dates?
No, certainly, especially not when everyone's in agreement. No.
Okay. Okay.
I'm in agreement.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's 3 of us, I think, with
Yes, I agree.
David, 2, okay, and
I
Kathy?
agree too. There's
Okay.
an HRC advisory meeting on Tuesdays and an HRC commission meeting on Tuesdays. But
Yeah.
we're still able to keep in touch through the minutes and
At the same
speak
time?
with the people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They,
it's
One
6 o'clock.
Tuesday a month is
Oh,
the
okay.
advisory. They had one yesterday. I did not attend. I don't know if they made quorum or not. And then like this following Tuesday, they'll have their commission meeting.
Okay,
Mr. President,
yeah, yes, sir.
I sat in on the HR advisory meeting yesterday. They did not have a quorum. It was a very short meeting, and not very much was discussed because of lack of.
Right.
But they start, I believe, at 6 o'clock on Tuesdays. The commission meeting, they should have a heavy agenda this time. And it sounds like our agenda is going to be heavy in discussion as well. So, Kathy and I may not be at the commission meeting because our stuff is important as well. So that's the only issue that exists on Tuesdays. But we have to do what we have to do, and we'll catch up with the commission from that point on.
Okay, super. Moving on to another point, Mr. Betza.
Yes.
Can
Yes.
we go ahead with Ms. Schaaf's resolution, or do we need to rename it an ordinance?
No, I was just, I think there's some time pressure on the treasurer's office.
Right.
I can live with the resolution.
Okay. So
I normally prefer anything that affects the pocketbook of a taxpayer to be done in an ordinance form. But what we're doing, in no matter what we decide, it's always to the benefit of the taxpayer, not to the negative. So I can live with the resolution. I don't see that that's a problem. What I would suggest that we do is let's read Ms. Schaaf's resolution. If 4 or more of you support that, then we have a deal. We have a resolution that's done. If we disagree with it and we want to tinker with it or change it in any way, shape, or form, that's fine as well. Once you approve it, we'll just need to put it into written form and have it signed. But you can pass that resolution tonight. I just need to know what 4, hopefully everyone will agree, but I just need to know what at least 4 of you want to do, and we'll put it in written form.
I think we pretty safely say we have 4. Kathy, you agree? Ms. Schaaf?
I'm sorry, yes, I would hope so, yes, thank you.
I think we're good with 4. We'll move forward with that.
Okay.
Super. What time is it?
I have 7:30.
Okay. All right, it is 7:30 now, so we will get the regular meeting started. And just for everybody's information too, Mr. Betza will be the star of the, what do you call it? The public hearings tonight. We figured it would be wise to have our attorney deal with the situation because it could get rather not explosive, but heated. Okay, everybody on board with that? And I think with that, let's, Ms. Lori, you ready to start?
Roll call for the city council meeting of Wednesday, January 20th, 2021 at 7:30 PM. Mr. Brzezinski, Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Schaaf, Mr. Winarski, and Mr. Witherspoon. Please stand for a moment of silence and pledge of allegiance.
Ms. Schaaf, you want to say anything?
I would just like to have us remember Annie Leinbach, the peanut lady who had her business since 1975 on the corner of East 10th Street and State Street, where many, many, many people had delicious peanuts and snacks from her place, with her genuineness to a committed city of Erie to the very end. She passed away over the weekend, I believe, at 89 years old, and worked up till the very end there shortly. So my condolences to her family.
Thank you. And I also like to add Uncle Richard or Dick Dulesky. He was a longtime hero at General Electric. He worked with a lot of apprentices and taught them how to do the job the right way. We love him. We're going to bury him tomorrow morning. Thank you. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear Heavenly Father, we come before you today
just first of all, thankful for the changing of the guard in our country and a peaceful transition. And we just ask that you shine upon our country, shine upon our city as we try and grow together and form a more perfect union. We ask this in your solemn name.
Amen. Michael, I'm sorry. I forgot about the prayer. I'll learn. Okay, moving right along. We have the approval. Lori, it's your job, right? I'm doing good.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the minutes from the January 6, 2021 City Council meeting and bills for payment on January 22nd and 29th, 2021. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Schaaf, Mr. Winarski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Brzezinski. I have 2 repository sales if you'd like me to go ahead.
Yes, go ahead.
We have one regarding 1162 East 26th Street. I'm writing in response to the letter I received regarding my inquiry of the purchase of property located at 1162 East 26th, index number 1850-43-100 for $250. Is the property vacant or does it have a structure on it? The property is vacant. What are your plans or intentions for the property? First and foremost, clear the debris, do necessary landscaping like weeding and planting grass. Then I'd like to enclose the property with a small fence. After the property is enclosed, I would place potted trees or bushes in the front for a nicer appearance. The property is overgrown with weeds and debris. My uncle owns the property adjacent to this property and a couple more properties on that block. How we provide for the maintenance of property such as responsibilities for mowing, snow removal, rubbish removal, board and seal, any repairs that need to get the property up to code. I will personally provide all maintenance for the property during winter and summer months along with the other properties I maintain. We have another letter. It's from the same gentleman, Paul Lekowitz. He lives at 150 Hull Drive in Erie. He's also inquiring about 506 East 10th. Is the property vacant or does it have a structure on it? The property is vacant. What are your plans or intentions? First and foremost, clear debris and do necessary landscaping like weeding and planting grass. Then I'd like to enclose the property with a fence. After the property is enclosed, I would place potted trees or bushes in front for a nicer appearance. The property is overgrown with weeds and debris. My uncle owns the property adjacent to the property and a couple more on that block. I would personally be responsible for all maintenance for the property during winter and summer months, along with the other properties I maintain.
What is his address?
His address, Mr. Letkowitz, is 150 Hull Drive, Hull Drive 16509. I think we emailed these to you if you wanted to email him, or his phone number's on there, and I could blow it up for you if you'd like to talk to him.
No, I always wonder, folks buy property next door, across the street, but on the other side of town, I always wonder why. But no, I don't need to call him. It's just something that sticks with me, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, next up we have citizens to be heard, public comments, residents to be heard. We haven't really decided what we're going to name it, but we'd like to read you the rules of council before we have the citizens to be heard. Any such person addressing council shall step up to the front of the podium or on a mic, give his or her name and address, and limit his or her address to 5 minutes unless given extra time by council. All remarks shall be addressed to council as a body and not to any member thereof. No person other than a member of council and the person having the floor shall be permitted to enter into any discussion directly or through a member of council without the permission of the presiding officer. No question shall be asked the council person except through the presiding officer. Reports from official boards, commissions, and other bodies may be received, and also reading of written communication to council on any matter concerning the city's business or any matter over which council has control. I would just ask you to be respectful and please state your name and address clearly for the record.
Council President, you just want me to read the names as they come in? Because I don't know who's here for what. I did send a list to Lori and council, but I can just bring them in as they raise their hands.
Okay, go ahead.
So Tom Maggio will be first.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Thank you. I'm Tom Maggio. I live at 620 Cherry Street. And I'm talking about the historic preservation business that has been kind of taking place behind the scenes. So a little history lesson. So in 1984, 100 some buildings on West 6th Street were included in a federally designated historic district. Out of a misplaced fear, the buildings would be torn down. This is largely because the neighborhood was deteriorating and the properties started to decline. So in fact, property values in the National Register Historic District on West 6th Street have either declined or been stagnant since the designation. Appreciation rates have ranged from -5% to 2% using recent sales data. So it's not uncommon to see homes for sale in the historic district languish for years on the market. Recent sale prices of mansions at 530 and 561 West 6th Street were 152,000 and 100,000 respectively. This is for over 4,000 square feet of well-maintained homes. So clearly the historic district designation has no positive effect on property. As any real estate professional knows, property value is based on the quality of location. With the high cost of maintaining these century homes, and I could tell you, as owning one, it is a high cost. The lack of modern home layouts and bathrooms, as well as the high property taxes, the crime, and the deteriorating buildings around us, buyers have long passed homes in the historic district by. I'm gonna read you a quote from Tom Hagen, who has been active in the district. He's purchased some homes and we're very grateful that he's done that. But to quote Tom Hagen in a newspaper article, "I am never going to get out of the investment I have in these properties." Well, Tom Hagen has $3 billion. I don't. The intention of buying a home in the city was to fix it up. We bought a home that was in disrepair and distress. My wife and I fixed it up, and our goal was to make money. And we're afraid that what's been proposed is really going to steal our equity from us. So the city's apparent solution to the decline is to make no public investment in the corridor in nearly 40 years, omit the neighborhood from inclusion in the opportunity zones without any explanation, and we've asked, and begin a process to steal our property rights from the people who have weathered the problems of owning the homes in this historic district. So let me talk a little bit about what was happening to our block, the Garden Court. In 2014, the homeowners on our block were told Preservation Erie wanted to have the city create an extra layer of zoning and bureaucracy just for us. It's called an overlay district. We'd have to request permission to work on our homes and abide by special rules that would make home ownership and repairs dramatically more costly. What would we get in return for that? Grants, low interest loans, tax credits? Nothing. Just the loss of our property rights to save our homes from whom? From us, from our decisions. The often talked about and much ignored comprehensive plan calls for, guess what? Grants, loans, tax forgiveness, and tax credits for historic homes. That's exactly what we've been asking for years. As a founding board member of what is now Preservation Erie, I advocated for the exact same thing: grants, loans, low interest loans, tax forgiveness, tax credits, technical assistance to help people make good decisions. But instead, we see a heavy-handed approach. This is why most people have a negative reaction to historic preservation. So the 27 households on our block discussed this. We overwhelmingly rejected it, with the exception of one household who has since moved to Mill Creek. Let me repeat that. The Garden Court rejected the overlay district and any attempt to push special restrictions on us. So 6 years later, and I'm almost done, so bear with me. 6 years later, between the shootings, the nuisance bar, the drug deals, and the tax increases, our neighborhood is in the crosshairs again. This time, the city has taken the lead in pursuing a plan to steal our property rights. Only the tactics have changed. A task force was appointed, which included no one from the historic district, although there was a person from Mill Creek and a person from Harbor Creek, which I think was very charitable. The task force met in private. The Garden Court asked to address the task force, but was denied. Ask yourself, where is the transparency, and why is the public not allowed to be a part of the conversation, especially when they are the targets of a new historic review committee and enforceable guidelines that dictate how we can repair or improve our homes? Why did this process have zero public participation and zero public outreach? The task force was asked if there would be a scheme to dictate how home repairs would be approved by the city. The city staff replied that no decisions have been made, yet the minutes of the meetings and the city's application for funding to PHMC obtained by an open records request from PHMC indicate otherwise. So the 9-page draft ordinance, which was created without any public input or scrutiny, has already been written. We just got a copy of it last week, only a few days before this meeting. It was not on the city website. And I want to add that all across the country, this is happening.
Time's up.
We see horror stories about people having been fined.
Mr. Maggio,
painted
your
their
time has
home.
expired.
Your time is expired.
I'd like to have one more point to
No,
make.
no,
I'd ask the city
no.
council.
no.
Freda Tepfer.
Hi, this is Freda Tepfer, 1738 West 23rd Street, Erie, Pennsylvania, 16502. Although I would say, since I'm required to give you that on a form, I don't understand why I have to put it out there publicly for anybody to hear. So there is an item on the agenda tonight, a transaction related to money from or to Perry Square Alliance and the electrical work at the Perry Square. I want to repeat again the fact that Perry Square Alliance is not functioning like a board or an authority. I was denied to go to one of their meetings. I really think that if this entity is so actively involved with our town square, their meetings should be open to the public. I also want to say that I'm looking forward to a open and non-confrontive spirit on the council this year, but I do want to express a little concern at some comments that have been made about the desire for 7-0 voting. It's not necessary to have 7-0 voting. It's not necessary as a goal. It's winter time, and it's really important for our sidewalks to be negotiable by people. Those who hire people to clear their driveways, and in this case, I'm specifically talking about churches, industrial and businesses, that they should not be allowed to block the sidewalk with berms. I report those as I see them, and traffic engineering tries to get them taken care of. But there should be a requirement that those who do sidewalk plowing, driveway plowing in this town should have to get a permit and should have to get information from the city code that talks about how you're not supposed to obstruct the sidewalk with snow. There should be fines for the repeat offenders, the owners of that property. I'd like to see this mentioned on the city's social media, and I'd like to see the mayor address it at least once a season on his news conference. People should have the right to access their sidewalks. And the city has an obligation to make sure that the walkway along the Bayfront connector on the east side of town, which is now the only way people can get where they're going since they destroyed the viaduct, that should be maintained in a timely fashion. I've been told that it's been allowed to become an icy walkway. It should be maintained in a timely fashion. And one more question I have, as I'm sitting here and there are snowmobiles riding up and down my street, making a lot of noise and putting out a lot of air pollution. Are they street legal? Are snowmobiles and not dirt bikes, but are snowmobiles and other off-road vehicles street legal in the wintertime? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tepper. Next.
Randy Barnes.
Fire away.
Council President, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay, thank you, Council President, Council. My name is Randy Barnes, 109 Walton Point, Erie, Pennsylvania, 16511. I want to start off by saying I too have been on the receiving end of being called names and bullying, and I realize that's part of putting yourself out there, putting your opinion out there, or running for political office, being elected. So I just want to make a comment, and I want to read from the Erie Times. Before council's vote on Brzezinski's nomination, Allen told her colleagues that, quote, "I am not a nut." And I want to say, unquote, and I want to say that I am also not a nut. And I don't want to be called that. And I wanted to say that since I was here last talking to you, I've done extensive research, and Harbor Creek has never had a police department. And from what I can understand, whether Harbor Creek has had a police department or not has nothing to do with the city's financing. The city's finances have been a mess since the mid-50s, about 70 years because of a Democrat rule, and more so in the last 20 years of this finance bonds and put off payments and float them out there with balloon payments. So that brings us up to what our big concern is today, is what are we going to do with this big chunk of $90 million that we borrowed from our grandchildren's future? Well, if you go back, and I can send you these, or you can find them on October 9th of 2019 in Erie Times, they talked about how, we're paying this guy PFM from Philadelphia, this outsider is telling us what to do from Philadelphia. He's saying, you need to pay down your $1 million of debt. You need to pay down your pension. You need to pay down your debt. That was in 2019, and goes on, and the mayor at that time says, quote, "We're open to anything." And he goes on, and the mayor says, "We have two options, are contributing more money to our pensions and paying down our debt." So then we fast forward, let's fast forward to February 10th of 2020, just 11 months ago. This is PFM's final report. This guy from Philadelphia is going to tell us in Erie what to do, this outsider. How dare him? We paid him $180,000 and we're going to listen to him? Well, maybe not. Because in that article, I'm going to quote, "We're ready to implement whatever changes they recommend," Schember said. Whatever change. You know what they recommended? They recommended paying down the debt and paying against your pension. But you know what? The house of cards is falling apart because you can't do that now. You've squandered some of this money to float the budget for the next few years. So what do you do with a person that tells you they're going to do one thing, then when they get the money, they do something else? How do you 7 people feel about that, you elected officials, when you see the citizens that have elected you, and they allow you to take the next 40 years of money from your grandchildren's children and do what with it? You haven't done what PFM told you to do, have you? and you haven't called the mayor on this, well, it's going to cost a lot if we repay early. No one's called him on that, have they? Hey, I want to fast forward and talk a little bit about a very well written, spoken person that wrote an article in the paper just the other day. And he was the person that created Erie Equal. Is it Erie Equal? I believe it's Erie Equal. And then he wrote about, and it was on Martin Luther King Day, about the fact that in 50 years, we've made very little progress. And I'm not Black, so I can't say what it's like to be Black, but I know there has been some progress made in 50 years. And to say there's been very little progress really kind of puts down what Martin Luther King and all those people have worked hard over the last 50 years to try to end racism in this country. So I hope that other people, our elders are helping the younger generations understand, yeah, there's a lot of work to be done, but we've come a long ways. We have made progress in the 50 years. And to say that we have made very little is to kind of like spit on Martin Luther King's grave. And that's not fair, because he gave his life unknowingly. He gave his life. And a lot of people have worked awful hard to end this racism, including your—
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. I think your time is up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. I think we have time for one more before the 8 o'clock public hearing.
If there's any other citizens to be heard, please use the raise hand button. Melinda Meyer.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Hi, my name is Melinda Meyer. I reside at 114 Carver Avenue, Erie 16511. I'm here today as a member of the City of Erie's Historic Preservation Task Force, as well as the chair of Preservation Erie. The seeds of the city's historic preservation program were planted nearly 20 years ago with the City Council's adoption of the first preservation ordinance. Because very little, if any, progress had been made on developing the program in earnest, and the city's comprehensive plan, Erie Refocused, calls for a more robust approach to caring for and capitalizing on the community's historic resources. In March of 2019, Mayor Schember and you, City Council, jointly created the Historic Preservation Task Force by resolution. Our 7-member committee has given 2 years to research, study, and develop a plan for the city that would position it to effectively address historic preservation. You'll hear much more about the work of the task force at Council's January 28th study session. I'd like to thank the administration and City Council for prioritizing the recommendations of Erie Refocused and many other planning efforts and creating the Historic Preservation Task Force. The Planning Commission, Department of Planning and Neighborhood Resources, and Historic Preservation Task Force have submitted for your review and hopefully approval a proposed amendment to Article 7 of the zoning ordinance. Sorry, I'm talking very quickly to try and get my notes in within 5 minutes. The amendment provides definitions of terms relevant to historic resource protection, outlines the purpose and guidelines to establish historic preservation overlay districts, and identify individual historic resources, and creating a historic review commission. Rather than discuss the legislation itself and the processes it would create, I'd like to take this opportunity to talk about the benefits of historic preservation, and specifically the economic benefits of creating local historic districts as permitted through the proposed amendment. In January 2020, Place Economics, a research and consulting firm specializing in the economics of historic preservation, published the report, 24 Reasons Historic Preservation is Good for Your Community. The report begins, historic preservation is good for cities. No, not just good, historic preservation is great for cities. The reasons preservation is great for cities are multiple: aesthetic, symbolic, cultural, social, educational, economic, and others. Reasons 1 through 3 are jobs, downtown revitalization, and heritage tourism. But let's highlight number 4, property values. And this goes to what Mr. Maggio mentioned previously. The report reads, there is no area of preservation economic analysis that has been done more often than measuring the impact of local historic districts on property values. Regardless of the researcher, the methodology, or the location of the study, the results of these analyses have been remarkably consistent. In nearly every instance, properties in local historic districts have greater rates of appreciation than properties elsewhere in the same city. 30 years ago, opponents to the creation of a local historic district usually claimed historic districts means one more layer of regulation. More regulation, prima facie, lower property values. Of course, study after study has demonstrated the opposite has been true. The values of properties have significantly benefited from local district designation. Foreclosure Patterns is number 5. Place Economics has studied more than 20 cities since 2007, and they found that foreclosure rates in local historic districts were decidedly lower than the rest of the city. For example, in designated historic districts in Pittsburgh, the foreclosure rate was less than a third of what was experienced in the rest of the city. Number 7 is small business. Historic districts and buildings have a competitive advantage. They contain attractive buildings and other attributes desirable to small businesses. Small businesses don't just provide convenience and local jobs, they are also the source of a neighborhood's commercial vitality. These businesses value the unique character inherent in historic buildings and often value the competitive rents of older structures. Consider the successes of Federal Hill and PACA in attracting locally owned small businesses.
Ms. Meyer, I think your time is up.
This is just a sampling of research-based evidence. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, I think at this time, I will be abdicating the chair to Attorney Betza, and he will be chairing the 3 hearings that we have on the amendments to zoning ordinances. Mr. Betza?
Thank you. The 2 of the public comments were directly related to one of the hearings. And so I guess we need to make sure we'll take care of that, and we'll incorporate those comments into the public meetings. But both Ms. Meyer and Mr. Maggio's comments, they both try to keep to 5 minutes. We don't require that you stay within 5 minutes. We ask that you be as brief as possible, but we don't require with a public hearing that you be limited in time. So if Ms. Meyer or Mr. Maggio have additional statements that they would like to make, you can come back on. But the first of our hearings tonight, we have 3 of them, relates to a proposed ordinance to establish a historic preservation overlay district and to create a historic review commission. And so the role of counsel at this point is to listen to people and we call it testimony. It's not a formal court proceeding, but we do want to allow everyone to be heard on this issue because it's a significant issue for the city. So anyone that wishes to offer testimony, we're going to have to do this on the honor system. We'll have the court reporter, Ms. Mahana, swear you in. And then we can go in order of people that wish to speak. The only ones that should be speaking first should be on the Historic Preservation Overlay District and Historic Review Commission ordinance. So with that, anyone that wishes to offer testimony on this or the other hearings, which will be developments on West 2nd Street, I would ask that you raise your right hand, and Ms. Mahana, if you're able to swear them in.
Ed, I have a point of clarification. I was going to give a brief staff report at the beginning. Should I be sworn in as a staff, or should I provide that report?
It doesn't hurt to be sworn in. I think it's probably the safer bet, just in the event that there's some need to have the transcript generated. But yeah, Ms. Rosdick, you would certainly be an appropriate person to start. But why don't we have all of the witnesses be sworn? For anyone that wishes to offer testimony at any of the public hearings tonight, if you would, please raise your right hand. And Ms. Mahana, if you take it away.
Do you and each of you swear or affirm the testimony you give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And Frank, or Ms. Rosdick, why don't you start off? Ms. Rosdick is the planning director for the city, and then we'll hear from her, and then we'll hear from anyone that wishes to speak on this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Betza. City Council, good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to present this information to you tonight. This has been a long work in progress, and that with the Historic Preservation Task Force that you appointed almost 2 years ago. What you have before you is an outcome of some of the work that that task force has done on your behalf. It is a zoning ordinance amendment as described by Mr. Betza. It amends the Article 7 of the Historic Resource Protection Clause of the zoning ordinance. There's also a slight amendment to Article 6 to add some definitions. Just a point of clarification is, as many of you recall, one of the reasons that we're essentially beefing up this section of the zoning ordinance is to position the city to become a certified local government. The CLG status will then open the city up for opportunities for more technical assistance for property owners who have historic preservation or have historic buildings, and also other funding resources for those homeowners. It will also assist the city in positioning themselves to be much more not aggressive, but advocates for historic preservation. So we see this as the right step. Another point of clarification is that this section of the zoning ordinance already exists. What we're doing is we are adding language that would help us meet the requirements that SHPO is asking for us to become a certified local government. So you have had since, I believe 2005 is when it was added to the zoning ordinance, this section of the zoning, which essentially creates an overlay district. So this is not a new occurrence within the zoning ordinance, but we are strengthening the language. What it also does is it includes the creation of a historic review commission, and that review commission is a requirement of the State Historic Preservation Office, or SHPO, to become CLG. What you need is a commission composed of professionals in the field of real estate, in the field of historic preservation, in the field of law, to help provide guidance and advice to the city as they enact their local historic preservation efforts. The change also will create, once the property owners or city council, but primarily it's property owners, will request the zoning amendment for their properties to help protect those properties or the district. So this would all primarily come from property owners who are requesting this. This does not automatically, once you adopt it, does not automatically apply the zoning district anywhere in the city. That can only happen through what you would normally have seen through a request for zoning or rezoning of that property. So there's much more to come after this. The importance of this amendment, though, is the creation of the HRC, which will be the reviewing body that provides guidance along with the Planning Commission to the City Council to change the zoning of properties. So that's essentially what this is doing. It also strengthens the language to meet the requirements of the state and the national level for our CLG application. So there's much more to come on this, but this is the first step in implementing what I think is a very robust historic preservation program for the city. The public input for all of this work will not only occur today, but it will also occur during public hearings for when property owners want this applied to their properties. So there is an opportunity for property owners to have a discussion, not only with the city, but also with the Planning Commission. This did go before the Planning Commission, and Jake Welsh will conclude the public hearing today with the Planning Commission's recommendation. So you will hear this, and this has been discussed many times with the Planning Commission. So with that, I will turn it back over to anyone else who wants to speak.
Thank you.
If you do wish to speak, if you would raise your hand, and then Frank will get you into the meeting.
Janet Ferguson?
Yes.
So you want to talk at the next, this is not the one you want to speak at.
Okay, they're all,
Just say this is not the one. you
this
want to
says
speak at.
unmute.
Got it. Okay, I'll bring you in for the next one. Susan Day?
I'm for the next one as well.
Perfect. Is there anyone, if anyone could raise their hand for this particular topic, that'd be very helpful. Ed, are we allowing duplicate people to speak on a multitude of issues? Yes.
You can,
Okay.
you can, yes, you can testify on more than one hearing. Both Ms. Meyer and Mr. Maggio made their comments in 5 minutes. If they have additional things to say, they could also come back. But if somebody wanted to offer testimony on the Second Street development and this, that would be fine.
Okay, so I guess I'll bring in Tom Maggio again.
Thank you. Well, I just wanted to comment again that, you know, there's been no public input. Public input and a public hearing aren't the same thing. I've been in planning and community development for over 25 years. I'm a certified planner as well. When I did planning in the city for the Port Authority and the Redevelopment Authority, I had robust public input all the time. And this is to gain trust. And right now, my neighbors, none of them knew that this was happening. There's been, I think, there's been nothing in the newspaper that I saw. And quite frankly, the Planning Commission meeting, I can't attend because I'm working. And that's not, there's no public input, there's no discussion. We've asked, the Garden Court has asked to take part and address the task force and talk about some of the tools that we feel we'd like to see to help us keep up with maintenance of our buildings. And we've been denied. And I just wanted to reiterate that. I just want the council to know that we've been denied the opportunity to have a discussion, a dialogue. That's what we want. So I think this should be paused until sufficient comment has been made. There are people in other parts of the city that are eventually going to be targeted, and they don't know about this. Let's be fair. Let's be transparent, and let's do the best thing for the people in the city. That's I just wanted to reiterate that. Thank you.
Linda Meyer.
So I did not read as quickly as I should have to get my full comments in with the 5 minutes. So I really appreciate the second opportunity, and I really just have one more paragraph to get through, and I really appreciate this opportunity. So again, to go back to some of the information that again was published by the report that came out in just January of 2020 from Place Economics. Again, they list 24 different reasons why historic preservation is good for the community. And I managed to ramble through about 5 to 7 of them. The last one I wanted to mention, I thought was really interesting, and this is kind of why I saved it for last, and that's jobs in knowledge and the creative class sectors is listed as number 9. And again, in conducting their research, Place Economics studied several different cities all across the country, about 20 different cities, one of which was Pittsburgh. And so their report states Pittsburgh has seen an in-migration of young educated workers, which really bodes well for their future. But the location of the jobs held by those workers is not random. Pittsburgh's historic districts capture a disproportionate share. While around 19% of all workers in Pittsburgh hold a bachelor's or advanced degree, More than 35% of workers in their historic districts have reached that educational attainment. And while historic districts contain slightly more than 37% of all of the jobs within Pittsburgh, those areas are home to 47% of the jobs in finance and insurance, 58% of the jobs in education, and 44% of the jobs in the information sector. These knowledge worker jobs are the growth areas in the US economy and are concentrated in the historic districts in Pittsburgh. This is just a sampling of the research-based evidence supporting historic preservation at the local level. And again, I thank you for your consideration of the proposed amendment to the zoning ordinance and your support for developing a historic preservation program for the city of Erie. And thank you. It felt so good to finish that.
If there is anyone else for this particular topic, please use the raise hand button. Council President, I do not see anyone using the raise hand button. So if you want to speak on this topic, I could also bring you in via the chat. I just want to say you want to speak on this topic for put it in the chat. I'll bring you in the room as well.
I'd just like to bring up the next public hearing item so they know what we're talking about. Is that okay?
Mr. Yeah.
Well, this is a request for waterfront conditional use submitted by PE Real Estate Holding LLC for construction of a 10-unit, 3-story, multiple family dwelling located at 946 West 2nd Street, parcel ID 174038-114, the property being located in the waterfront residential district. Mr. Welch?
Thank you, members of council. We have in attendance Mr. Mark Gusick and Mr. Philip Jesue to present the conditional use proposal.
But before they start, I guess I would just like to explain to anyone listening who may not be familiar with the idea of a conditional use. The City of Erie's ordinance allows multiple family dwellings and off-street parking lots in the WR district by conditional use. That conditional use requires really two things before City Council. The first is that there's a review of specific criteria that a property owner must establish in order to get the conditional use. Those criteria for today's purposes under the ordinance as the proposal for residential units really focus on parking. Parking lots are required to be paved. They need to have proper screening. They need to offer protection from vehicles on the street so that they don't come in and hit someone. They need to offer proper lighting, which is considered to be safe but not annoying. And they need to make an effort to preserve some of the natural landscaping to make the parking lot as most possible a park-like setting. The second part of the specific criteria is the exterior appearance of the buildings. The buildings are not permitted to be garish, is the term the ordinance uses. They have to match the scale of the neighborhood. So you couldn't have a sky rise in a one-story, surrounded by one-story building. So you're looking at the size, the height. You're also looking at the lighting around the exterior of the building. It must be also safe, but not annoying. Separate from that, City Council also has the right to consider the effect that any of the proposed uses would have on the immediate neighborhood. The goal is to preserve the integrity and of the existing development, and you have to weigh each case on a case-by-case basis. The city has the ability to add additional conditions to ensure safety or to preserve the integrity of the neighborhood. I know that some of you are concerned that there had been a variance request, and there's been some other zoning matters. Those are not before City Council. And if it was anything that went before the zoning hearing board, that's not relative or not important for tonight's purpose. Any zoning hearing board decision is appealed to the Court of Common Pleas, not to the City Council. So the City Council is really looking at what is important for the integrity of the neighborhood. We want to hear about the exterior of the buildings, and we want to hear about the parking. Those are really the critical things before City Council. I just wanted to let everybody hear that so they can understand when they're making comments. Thank you. So whoever is going to speak to explain the development, now would be a good time.
Okay, that'll be me. I'm the developer. My name is Philip Jesaway. I believe the architect should also be here as well. Brian Weber from Weber Murphy Fox. But I think I'll give you a summary of the concept and the basics of the design. And if you have additional questions and you'd like an architectural presentation, I think that Brian would be available to give that to you as well. So the concept here is basically to do a neo-traditional design and to, on an infill lot. So we noticed that there were a number of vacant lots in this neighborhood. I have experience developing multifamily infill properties in other cities. We think that the proximity to the bay, the proximity to 2nd Street and the urban street grid, and the presence in a neighborhood with a lot of traditional architecture makes this an interesting subject to do a low-rise apartment house, which is very common in a lot of mid-size and larger cities around the United States. And while there are some smaller versions of this in Erie, this for Erie, this for most cities would be a small building, and for Erie it would be a small to medium for this neighborhood. Essentially, what we did is did a architectural study of both the neighborhood and also Great Lakes architecture, traditional architecture, to try to find what traditional styles look like. And then the architect reinterpreted that to be a little bit cleaner and more modern with sort of less architectural styling. So we didn't wind up with something that was looked like a fake or a Disney World version of something that's traditional. But we kept the traditional materials, traditional lines, and traditional sloped roof of a historic property. So essentially, this building has 10 units. It's 3 stories. It rises approximately 47 feet up to the center of the gable. It has a rear setback of 15 feet, a side setback of 6 feet, and it has a setback from the street of approximately 150 feet. There's a parking lot in front of the building, which has been shielded from the street. After community meetings on a number of different occasions, we understood that people are concerned about on-street parking. So initially we had a higher unit count here and a parking space count of 13 units. I think we started out with 13 units and 13 parking spaces. We reduced the unit count down to 10 units, and we have kept the 13 spaces to provide some additional parking to take into consideration the community's comments about on-street parking. We also added landscaping berms both on the left and the right sides of the property and adjacent to the street, so that there is a driveway that leads into the property. But other than the driveway, the adjacent portions of the parking are screened from the street by landscaping trees, landscaping planters, and the same goes for both the left and the right of the property. The property is clad in a vertical white board and batten siding, which is a very traditional, both Great Lakes and sort of American vernacular architectural exterior cladding. And then the principal facade of the property, which faces to the north and the lake, is out of a material which is a charred wood. And it's a wood that has been actually burnt to make it resistant to the elements. It gives it a beautiful gray hue. And that tongue and groove cladding will be on the face of the building that faces the lake, which is also inset from the facade of the building a little bit, which gives it protection from the elements. It gives a rain screen. It provides some privacy from adjacent neighbors, both from them and to them from these residents. And then the building also has a standard shingle roof. There are balconies on all of the units facing the lake. So there are 2 units on each floor with large windows and glass balconies facing the lake. And then there are also windows on the sides of the building that have been done in a very symmetric, traditional, vernacular type of a pattern. Essentially a very simple, almost Gothic, American Gothic looking building that you would see in a farmhouse or a, other type of a rural type of a configuration. The landscaping is essentially xeriscape, which is, local trees that'll grow and thrive in this climate. And then a light gray shingle roofing, which will also complement the charred wood front and the white board and batten siding. And this is a market rate rental. The concept here is to really bring a type of housing to this neighborhood and to the downtown that's very, very common in other mid-sized to large-sized cities. This will be, market rate housing. It'll probably be some of the more expensive rental housing in the city because of the cost of new development of a new construction project in the city. We think that this is the type of housing that young urban professionals and retirees and other folks who are interested in living close to the lake, living in downtown Erie, being part of the urban environment would be interested in living in. This building will have a bike room and complimentary bikes on the ground floor. So one of the things we do in other cities now is provide bicycles, complimentary bicycles that people can use if you're a resident of the building. So people can come down and take a bike out of the lobby and ride to the neighborhood, ride out to dinner, ride to work if they want, and use it on a honor basis for the day. Those things promote pedestrians being on the street. They promote people biking to work rather than walking to work. It makes a big, big difference if somebody doesn't have to drag their bike out of their house to go somewhere, and it becomes a matter of convenience. And we see a very large increase in bicycle trips in other urban markets, and we find that it's an amenity that people really appreciate. The ground floor will also have a package room. One of the other things that we do now is have an automated packages because of the advent of Amazon and delivery services. Packages become a big issue, and having package delivery people in the neighborhood and misplaced packages. So we'll have an automated package system in the lobby where people can collect their packages at the end of the evening when they get home from work. We'll have an automated door system, what we call a butterfly system, where people have a video entry system, and that video entry system works when they're at home or when they're at work. So if they're out riding their bike, or they're at the office, or they're doing something with their friends, A delivery person can get into the building by calling them. You can see who the delivery person is, what they look like. There's a recording of it, and security photograph is taken. So these are all sort of technology based applications that allow a small building to actually operate profitably in a small market. And there are things that, again, are technologies that are happening in other markets pretty much across the board, very common in Pittsburgh. I live in New York. I develop a lot in Jersey City, Miami, other cities. And these are all standard features. And, the people, young folks in Erie who are moving to Erie and who have lived in these other cities will recognize these things. And I think it'll be a great reason for people to stick around in Erie when they can get some of the same housing features that they get in other markets. And the accessibility to the lake, the ability to have lake views, the ability to be part of an urban walking neighborhood where you can go out and walk down to the neighborhood barbecue or get a beer and come back home and be very close to work and very close to outdoor activities, I think makes this a really unique neighborhood. And I think the type of folks who will be drawn to this development will be up and coming professionals. There'll be people who are interested in living an urban lifestyle. And I think that this will complement both the city and the existing housing stock, and will be something that actually elevates the value of both single family and rental properties in the neighborhood. I'm from Erie. I was born in Erie. My family has lived there for 3 generations now. I have a very extensive family, and I'm doing these projects not for any kind of principal personal gain. I'm interested in seeing some of these really long vacant lots along the bay have something that's productive and interesting done with them. And I recognize, the value of being on the bay in a city that has the potential to evolve and really turn itself around from the 70s and 80s and some difficult years. And so my expertise is in development and doing these sorts of projects in other markets. And really, I'm bringing this to Erie to see if it works and to see if it's something that can bring a successful and beneficial result to the city and the neighborhood, and hopefully not lose money. And I'm happy to take any questions that anybody has.
Mr. Chairman, I
Yeah.
have two questions. One, the cost of one of the apartments.
In the range of $150,000 to $175,000
A month?
Oh, I'm sorry. That's the cost to develop it. No, it'll be between $1,000 and $1,500 a month.
Okay. The other question is, would it be a gated community?
It will not.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question also. You tell us there's 13 parking places for 10 units?
That's correct.
Are you going to restrict the renters to 1 car? Or where is the overflow of cars, which is something that folks in the neighborhood had called me about previously? I'm just trying to get a clarification. Most dinks, the double income, no kids yet, have 2 cars. Just a concern, have you approached
13
that?
space is enough.
13 is enough?
So it depends on where you are, and it depends on what time in history you're in. Today in New York City, people have no cars. And in Jersey City, they have 0.3 cars. And Jersey is a suburban environment. So Jersey City used to have 0.7 cars about 10 years ago. Today, they have 0.3 cars per household. And if you're in an environment where you're part of an urban walking community where you can be close to an urban environment. You may not find that these households have 2 cars. They may have 1 car, they may have a little bit less. So my guess is that 13 spaces will be more than enough for this constituency. It's one of the reasons why we provide things like bicycles in urban environments, is that it allows people to share a car and borrow a bike for the day to go downtown. I know it seems crazy if you live in Erie and you've had driven a car your entire life, but people who are under the age of 30 years old have a whole different way of looking at the environment and transit and living and communicating in an urban environment. I think people in Erie are interested in living in an urban environment. I just think that it's something that hasn't fully materialized yet. So this is part of that trend that will either take hold or it won't.
Okay, good. One last question. These will all be rental units, or would you be
Yes, they will.
selling?
They'll all
You
be
won't be
rental.
selling any units?
I won't. I at some point in the future, I'd be interested in doing for sale, but I don't think that the market is
There
ready
yet.
for it. I don't think it's proven, and I think that if this project is successful, I have another project that's coming up in front of you, just after this one. I think if these worked well, if the community was happy, if the city was happy, if they get the rents, that'll be a very big vote of confidence for the economics of the neighborhood. And the reality is there's not anybody else doing this, to my knowledge, and you need this in the city for sure.
Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
that's all I have. Yep.
Okay. Philip, I have
Yes,
a
ma'am.
question. I wondered if you, because we have followed along with this, we've, initial resistance, and I know that you met with various neighborhood groups in the Bayfront area. I just wondered, have you had similar, what do I want to say, kind of opposition in any of the other places where you've developed? I know, Jersey City is a different dynamic, but my late husband was from, Bergen County, New Jersey, and my father-in-law worked in Jersey City. And I certainly know how that's truly been a comeback story. And, maybe people think, well, you can't compare Jersey City to Erie, but I think Jersey City had a lot more problems than Erie has actually had. So did you have any resistance in any other development communities? And if so, what was your experience in overcoming the challenges or working with neighbors elsewhere? And I know that you have worked with neighbors here. So maybe if you could just tell the public a little bit about some of those meetings and outreach that you've done here and maybe elsewhere. I think that would be helpful to give some context.
Sure. So, every municipality is different and has different economic problems. So in New York and Jersey City, we have a different economic problem, or a different community problem that you also have in Erie. It just doesn't happen to be one that is a vocal part of this hearing, which is, income, equality, racial diversity, and those types of issues. And so, we've developed many luxury projects in New York that have met with resistance because of lack of affordable housing. And there is a huge economic divide in New York, and so we've had protests about that. And in my younger years in New York, those projects went forward, and they were all luxury projects, and certain people who wanted affordable housing weren't happy. We tried to ameliorate those situations, but sometimes there was no making people happy, so they were difficult community meetings. In Jersey City, we've done things like we do something called inclusionary housing, where you include affordable units in the development, and the city gives you a subsidy to do that. And, you know, what we find in Jersey City is that the, you know, 80% affordable really winds up being not that far from the market rate. And so the inclusionary housing really isn't a problem, and it's actually been a very successful program. So, you know, oftentimes we've had, you know, resistance, and we've added affordable components into our developments, and we actually even amended the Jersey City zoning code to now have a mandatory, you know, affordable component in the event that there are certain, you know, development incentives that are given. So, you know, we essentially every time in New York or New Jersey or Miami also, we go into a project, we meet with the community generally. We ask if there are any particular issues that, you know, are important to the community, and we try to address those. But, you know, in New York and New Jersey, we have as of right codes. So this has been the most discretionary approval process I've ever been through for any project. I've got to tell you, and it's the smallest project I've ever done. It has been, you know, a design review, a zoning review, a planning board, and now 2 city council hearings. And there is so much discretionary review that I think you have a pretty, you know, what I would call incredibly rigorous process for community involvement. And, you know, the mistake that we made at the very beginning is, you know, we thought that a sort of casual conversation with the community would be okay. And we really didn't know, this seemed like such a small project, and, you know, a nice quality architect, using the best people, spending a lot of money. We really thought that this would be a shoo-in, and nobody could possibly have a protest, because these sites have been vacant for a very long time, maybe 30, 40, 50 years. And generally people want to see development on these sort of vacant infill sites and neighborhoods. So we were shocked when we went to our first zoning board hearing back in August, and we had people who protested and said that, you know, we were carpetbaggers and out-of-town people, and they didn't want us here. And, you know, it really caught us off guard. And so we waited a couple months to get our you know, the results of the hearing back, and we decided to sort of start from zero again, as if, you know, we really needed to do a deeper outreach. And we did that deep outreach. We met with the people in the community who were upset in smaller meetings. And when I say smaller, these were big, small meetings. They were 10 to 12 people who met with our architect, both on site and in other telephone meetings. We then had a very large community meeting with everybody from the community. We had subsequent meetings to that, again, in smaller 5 to 10 group people to review findings of those meetings. And we actually fired our old architect, hired a new architect, came up with a new design, decreased the density, increased the parking, decreased the height, increased the setbacks. You know, we sort of did everything that we discussed and were asked of the community in those community meetings. And we also did it after having gone to a meeting, had a discussion with the wider meeting, recorded the discussion, or, you know, that somebody in the meeting from the community recorded it. Then we reconfirmed what we all discussed and agreed on at the meeting in an email, and we set off to execute that. And we have executed exactly on that promise, and that's what's being delivered to you today.
Hi, Mr. President, can I ask a couple questions to Philip? Hello?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Yes.
Go ahead.
So were you planning on utilizing the LERTA we have in place for your development?
Yes.
And I guess one of the questions I have is, what do you estimate the total development worth when it is completed?
About what it costs.
I guess about what it costs. So
about $1 million, about $1,750,000, about, $175,000 a unit. I don't think it's going to be worth tremendously more than it costs to build, because I don't think that the rents in if you do the rent comps in Erie, they are not spectacular today. And so the question is, are people going to show up and really like this and pay a little bit more? I hope that they will, and I'm kind of betting that they will. But if you use the regular market analysis from Erie, I will be lucky to be lateral move and to cover my costs.
Well, the reason I asked a question like that, because after 10 years when the LERTA expires, I guess I want to know how it affects our tax base or what type of property taxes it would generate for the city as well as the school district and the county. I know those are numbers you officially wouldn't know today or even in, but there has to be a window or a guesstimation on what type of tax revenues it would be for the city. Not only this one, with the following one at our next public hearing.
No, they're going to be significantly higher than 50-year-old unimproved rental housing. It will be significantly higher. I don't know what your tax assessor's basis is for evaluating properties, so I don't know yet. And I really, to be honest with you, I'm just trying to get through the entitlement and design process now. I haven't looked into the exact financials of how real estate taxes phase in, but my intention here is to build the nicest rental property that exists in Erie, and hopefully do it at a price and a budget that doesn't make it worth less than the rental value. So, but this can only succeed if it's a very successful nice project, because I'll never be able to get the rents to pay for the new cost of construction. And that's why you don't see construction on every block in Erie. The economics of building new are extremely challenging, not just in Erie, and pretty much in Jersey City too, where the rents are 3 times higher. It's just expensive to build everywhere in the United States now. And today, it's even more expensive than it was 6 or 8 months ago, because there happens to be huge inflation in building materials because of COVID. So building this building, we were hoping to break ground this spring, but I just broke ground on a project in Pittsburgh a few months ago, and my costs of construction are probably 25% higher because of lumber cost inflation. Lumber cost is 100% higher than it was 6 months ago. Doubled in value. So it's a long answer, but we don't really know exactly what the assessed value is.
And I wasn't trying to officially put that on you. That may be more of our own finance department question, or even Mr. Wells, Jake. But just want to know what impact it would have possibly after the LERTA does expire.
You're going to have you'll have full taxes from a luxury rental property. And so, you'll have 10 units, which will be worth more than the typical single family home in Erie. And, it'll be like having 10 new homes in the neighborhood. You'll also have 10 new people. You'll have 10 new incomes. You'll have 10 people paying income taxes. There's going to be 10 people in this property who never lived there before, and they're all going to be affluent because the minimum rent will be $1,000 a month. So they'll be among the more expensive rents in the city. So it will economically be beneficial from a tax standpoint, no doubt.
And I'm hearing you there. I know. I'll go back to Mr. Brzezinski. Just a little wondering if that 13 parking places are enough to accommodate a rental unit that size, but you did already answer that with him, but I don't know if there's room to add a few if need be. I just don't know if there's enough overflow parking on the street that would cause the congestion or issues in the neighborhood per se. That's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I have a question.
Go ahead, David.
Yes, Philip, this is Dave Brennan. I know we've talked before, and I have reviewed the plans by your architect and so forth. So I kind of understand the logic of what you're putting together here and why the placement is where it is. But I don't know if you could just take a few seconds. I know there's a lot of questions here, but just kind of explain the logic of the placement of the parking in the building, because I'm guessing there's reasons for that, and isn't just a choice. It's a logical choice. If you could explain it a little bit, just for everyone's benefit.
Sure. So, these sites, I mean, basically, most of the properties in this neighborhood are narrow, deep lots, and they need to have a building sit somewhere on them. So, and they also need to have side yard setbacks to keep the distance from the neighbors. So on this property, it's roughly 50 feet wide, and there are, minimum required 6-foot setbacks on either side, which brings it down to, closer to 39 feet wide. And a driveway to access a parking lot is generally 20 feet wide. That's how the depth that you need in order to permit a car to enter and exit together at the same time, so they don't get into a collision. And that's what you need in order for a car to pull out. And you can't have a 20-foot wide driveway going past a 39-foot house and getting to the other side without eliminating the entire ground floor and making it practically impossible to access it. So the Second Street side really is the only option for parking for this property. The other thing is, nobody wants a giant parking lot and lots of blacktop in the middle of their neighborhood. So you want this to be as close as possible to the street so that you minimize the amount of driveways. So what we did here is we increased the parking 30% above what's required by code. We also made it as large as you really could make it without making the whole thing look like a parking lot. We wanted to create plenty of green space between the building and the parking lot and the parking lot and the neighbors, and really strike the balance between having plenty of parking but having the thing look like a parking lot, surface level parking lot. And that does not belong in any urban environment. It's bad for the environment. It is terrible for your stormwater system. It's unattractive. It causes heat gain in the summertime, it also causes like very large areas that people walk past and have no visual interaction. So there's like a million urban planning reasons why it's bad, and most municipalities really want to minimize the parking for that very reason, because the negatives of parking generally outweigh the positives. Nobody wants new developments to park on the street. Nobody wants that. But at the end of the day, parking and accessibility to parking defines how many people have cars. And if you have a big parking garage under your building, guess what? People have cars. If you don't have any parking and they got to fight for it on the street, guess what? They don't get cars. It's just the way that it works. I own a couple buildings in a very similar neighborhood to this in Jersey City, close to the water, very varied economically, racially. And in that neighborhood, folks don't like to fight people parking on the street. And generally, if they can get away with not having a car, they don't do it. And, that's something that I think most cities want to promote. They want people to have fewer cars, and the government wants people to have fewer cars for environmental reasons. So, and I'm personally, it's my philosophy. I believe in that. I believe in environmental stewardship, and we promote it in all the developments that we do. So, we're trying to make this as sensitive to nature and the environment as we possibly can, while satisfying the community that, it's overparked and enough that people aren't going to be fighting for their proprietary space that they own on the street.
Is it safe to say that without LERTA, this would not be a deal?
The LERTA really helps a lot. The taxes in this waterfront district, in Erie in particular, are really, really high. And I think in a market where you have such low rents and such incredibly high lakefront real estate taxes, I don't know how you would ever have new development without LERTA. I just can't imagine how it would work. Unless you had very rich people buying vacation homes who could afford $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 a year taxes. In Manhattan, you buy a $5 million place and your taxes are $25,000 a year. In Erie, you buy a $300,000 place and your taxes are $20,000 a year. It's a very expensive real estate tax market. So I think LERTA is critical.
Thank you. Thank Mr. Schember too.
Mr. President, my question is, if this project goes through, what percentage of minority workers will be on that project?
As many people as apply for the subcontracting jobs. We do lots of MBE, WBE projects. We promote inclusion in all of our projects, both on a permanent income, working basis and a subcontractor basis. We're doing a project right now essentially in the Hill District in Pittsburgh. And, we have voluntary MBE on that project. We're not required by law or anything else. And, the good thing is in Pittsburgh, the minority contractors are so busy, we actually had to go out and solicit them and get them into the job because they're busy and they don't need the work. So, I don't know what the scene is like in Erie, but this will be open to all minority contractors, and we'll take advantage of that workforce and provide those opportunities anywhere we can. But it's an outreach issue, and so if that's something that you're interested in promoting as a council person, when we get ready, we'll come to you and maybe you can help us with community outreach, because it requires a huge amount, much more than just putting an ad in the paper. That does almost nothing. You got to really go out and let people know that opportunities are there for them, and then you get participation.
Mr. President, I would like to be assigned to that aspect of the project if it goes.
I'll be your assistant, sir.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Mr. President, I have something to say. Is that all right?
Yes.
Thank you. Philip, in our panel chat, it says that in a previous meeting that you said that apartments would rent for $1,800 to $2,000. And
that's
now
not correct.
That's not correct. Okay.
No.
So you're saying, but I consider myself knowledgeable in real estate. I don't have it's a big hobby of mine. I can't afford anything. I have champagne taste with a beer belly budget type of thing, but $1,000 to $1,500 for new on the lake is definitely reasonable. Like, not for me, because it's still like, but for people who can pay for it, and knowing all that, are you going to have like a, what is that? Like, let's say you have 25 people who want your 110 unit place. How are you going to say who gets in? Are you going to have
Let me just tell you, if there's 25 people for 10 spaces, it will be 1,800 to 2,000.
Oh, because there's that, but you're actually taking a risk. You know that because of like what you're saying, the prices are higher now and you start, and that's affordable.
Michael, what did he want?
So you truly, if this goes through,
Good question.
you are committed. I can see that.
Yes, there's a big risk of losing money or not making money on this, because there's no comps. Nobody's renting in downtown Erie for over $1,000 or $1,200 a month. I mean, maybe there's one rental in the whole city that's more than that. So, if you're going to bet a couple $1 million, it's a big bet. So I'm betting that if I do something really nice here and people support it, that there will be some people who are really interested enough in a Lakeview and living downtown who will pay more. But there's no historic evidence to go by, so that's why it's a big risk.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
a couple questions. One, the average size of the apartments, and you did say that they would start at around 1,000. Do you have an idea what the top rate would be? And I would like to echo Mr. Witherspoon's concern that when we do get closer, please read the City of Erie in so that we can, help with an action plan to make sure that this project has inclusion in it.
Sure.
And the other thing, you spoke about other developments having set-asides for affordable housing, which we don't have an ordinance for it here. But I think that, it would go a long way as a gesture if there were a set-aside for moderate income or disabled persons. And particularly in that Bayfront neighborhood, there may be something you can do with prioritizing keeping people in that neighborhood when you go to how you decide who you're going to rent to and who you're not going to rent to when the project gets to that point.
So a couple questions. In terms of the average sizes, there are 10 units and there are studio 1 and 2 bedrooms. So the 2 bedrooms are about 1,000 square feet and the studios are about 500 or 600 square feet and the 1 bedrooms are about 700 or 800 square feet. Those are very standard sizes, whether you're in LA, Miami, Jersey City, Pittsburgh. That's like how big young people want their apartments to be. And, it's the same sort of socioeconomic group amongst all those places. And Erie too, it's the same people. Yeah. In terms of outreach, you should think about an outreach plan now, because if this is approved, I'm going to move forward and, do plans and go into the ground soon. So, you should think about it immediately because it take a few months to put into place. And so now's the time to do it. And in terms of community membership, you'd be surprised how many people want to remain in their neighborhood and feel comfortable in that neighborhood and wind up spending more to live there. Everybody wants luxury product in their life and everybody wants nice things. And, you can buy a used VW for $500 and you can buy a new VW for $30,000. And there's tons of people everywhere, Erie, and Newcastle, wherever you are, who buy brand new cars all the time for $30,000. And they do that because they want some luxury product in their life. And I think you'll find in this neighborhood, there are plenty of local people, both people of color and others, who want to remain in the neighborhood, who have a good job as doctor, nurse, lawyer, whatever, construction worker, making 50, 75,000 bucks a year, and they can afford $1,000 a month, and they want a luxury place to live. They want to treat themselves nice. They want to have a nicer lifestyle. And that's what this is about. It's about, getting out of that old creaky place with dusty floors and, drafty windows. That's, somebody's renovation 3 renovations ago, and having something that you see in magazines that's something that's really nice. And, we want people from the neighborhood to move up to this and to stay in the neighborhood. So our goal is, we don't have a social goal here. I'm a developer and a capitalist. My goal is to make money. And whoever pays the most gets to stay. But certainly if this building can be full of local people and people of color and people who are members of the community, that's the best thing I could possibly do, is to make money and do that at the same time. So that's my goal in life.
Any other questions from the council?
No, sir.
I guess not. Mr. Betza, what do you think? What's next?
We would then take any testimony from any resident or citizen that wishes to speak.
Okay. Frank,
Colonel
you're on.
Tepfer, I know you've had your hand up for 30 minutes. I hope not physically. So you're coming into the room.
Thank you. I actually lived in the neighborhood my first year in town. I lived on 2nd and Poplar, and there is an apartment building across the street which blocks the view of the bayfront. I just want to read something from the from the waterfront district. It says, landscape design and planning shall be integrated with the overall area design concept and not be considered merely as an afterthought. Towards this end, proposed landscaping schemes will be evaluated as to their relationship to the existing natural landscape. As an example of this, in an area containing a stand of trees, the developer should preserve as many of these trees as possible and further landscape in a complementary manner, rather than destroying the existing trees and replant with a type of vegetation foreign to the immediate natural environment. At least in the photo that I looked at of this property, there's a nice stand of trees and shrubs. So I would hope that rather than destroying the existing vegetation, that this be particularly taken into account, and that any new vegetation be native and native to natives, because this is quite close to the wooded area across the Bayfront Parkway, and it's not that far from the bay, and it ought to be preserved. Also, in terms of the transit is not that accessible to people living in this, who might live in this area. It's a little bit far. I think the transit was moved to 6th Street in this neighborhood, so it's a bit of a walk, just in terms of the parking situation. But also it's important that the configuration of the parking lot be adequate to provide a place for snow to be stored, to ensure that the sidewalks are not obstructed when removing snow from the parking spaces or the entrance to the parking lot. Thank you.
Robert Sprickman.
Yes, I'm here. I live at 111 Plum, and
Robert, I'm sorry. I'm going to stop you real quick. Is the court stenographer still in?
Yes,
Okay. Do you need to swear them in?
I
No, they've all been sworn.
Okay, apologies.
Okay. I was looking at the zoning board minutes with exhibits for this property at 946 West 2nd Street, and that was from October 11th, 2020. And there's an overhead picture on page A11, on page 49 of this 57-page PDF. And it shows you that this property is shoehorned right next to the Laura Wallenstein apartments for people with special needs. It's going to loom over their parking lot and their only entrance, where their transport and supply vehicles come and go day and night. So I would urge you to look at those plans that are on the Erie zoning board, just so you get an idea of what this thing's going to look like and where it is going to be, because it's well, I'll leave it to you. I'll talk to you guys later. I'm going to wait for the 8:30 or 8:24 property next. Thank you.
Mr. President, do we have a copy of what the gentleman just spoke of in the clerk's office?
That's a good question. We got copies of everything that Jake had, I believe. Wasn't it? Jake, you still there? Mr. Welch?
Yes, all the materials have been distributed as far as the exhibits for both proposals.
Okay. Maybe it's in my 100 emails I get a day somewhere.
We know the feeling.
Yeah. I'll look for it, and if I don't have it, I'll get a hold of Jake.
Super.
Okay, moving on, Janet Ferguson.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'd like to introduce my attorney, Jen Greenfeld, to speak before me, and then I'd like to speak after him. So if you would recognize him and have him speak first.
Attorney, go ahead.
That was my mistake. He was still in the attendees. I had to bring him in.
Okay.
Mr. Greenfield, you should be able to unmute yourself.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Our comments relate primarily to the next application. So if you'd prefer, and I think it might be more appropriate, I'll defer until then. And I'd certainly appreciate being called on as early in the public participation part of that as possible.
Ms. Ferguson, does that mean you do not have public comment on this topic?
Our connection was a little bit sketchy, so I'm not quite sure. You're talking about the 900 block property or the
946.
Okay, my only comment about 946 is there is absolutely no parking around that place. The street is narrow, and the employees at Wallerstein park up and down that street. It's almost worth your life to drive down there. And that's the end of my comment on this property.
Dan Dahlkamper.
Good evening, City Council, Mr. Mayor. I am a member of the Design Review Committee. As a landscape architect, I've been sitting on the Design Review Committee for many years. I don't even know how many. Hopefully Jake could tell me, although it was before he was there. And we've seen a lot of projects come through, and we review the Bayfront Conditional Zoning projects. And the Bayfront Conditional Zoning, as I understand it, is for conditional uses and should be a flexible type of zoning. We've seen from the convention center and the hotels down there to other housing units. And in that neighborhood where there's been developments, been some very standard and I would say cheap developments that meet the setback requirements but are uninspired. People they pave the whole of the front yard to meet the parking requirement. They have to back out into Second Street or wherever they're developed, and it just has been uninspired. And now we've had a developer come to town who has some interesting ideas with contemporary living. And I think as the city, we need to really look at, what do we want for ourselves? We haven't seen much development because of the issues that Philip has indicated in that area. And, he's gone, we haven't seen anybody quite go above and beyond the call of duty. We've seen the projects twice and they've addressed the concerns, and it's been passed by the Design Review Committee, Zoning Hearing Board, and the Planning Committee to come before you all. And so I think that we need to have new and current ideas. And if we do develop parking problems, which there aren't, we live at 108 Myrtle Street now. There's on-street parking for people down there. You just work around it. They have met all the requirements. And so I think as a future, and we've got seasoned veterans on council, you've got an architect on there, you've got people that do their research, and I think we really need to look for the future, and we're hoping to move things forward. Do understand, I have an interest in 824 and 828. We have a contract with Philip to sell that property. We were going to develop it, but I found a place closer into downtown, and we do just what he says. We walk to events to downtown when there's not a pandemic, and we're enjoying the urban lifestyle. And of course, I've been involved with the neighborhood, the Bayfront Promenade, a lot of the trails and parks along the Bayfronts. We're making the most to enjoy that, and to get more rental units in the neighborhood is only going to be beneficial to activity, for safety, and enjoyment of the community. So thank you very much.
Frank, who do we have next?
Forgive me if I mispronounce your last name, but I'm going to say Steve Shalinsky.
Yes, Mr. Betza, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, yes, good evening, Council. Good evening, Mr. Mayor. My name is Steve Shalinsky, and I own the property at 947 West 2nd Street, which is directly across from the property we're discussing tonight. And I know I'm going to be the 6th or 7th person to bring up the parking, but I have a lot of firsthand knowledge there, pulling in and out of the driveway at my property. My concern is more for the wintertime with odd even parking. 2nd Street is very narrow to begin with. As far as I know, there's no parking on Cascade between 2nd and 3rd. So any overflow parking for this unit would have to be on 2nd Street itself. Now, I know Mr. Jesaway has mentioned different studies in different cities with car ownership being differently. I don't think that's the case here in Erie. I guess my first question is, would there be one parking space per unit? And then what if a tenant has more than one vehicle? I mean, obviously that's going to have to be on 2nd Street. So that's my first point, is the parking. I think we're underestimating the issue with the parking. And I know a previous speaker had brought up the Wallerstein apartments that are right next door. I believe 956 is the address. There's a lot of emergency vehicles that go down there, fire trucks, ambulances, very narrow. When there is a fire truck there, there's no way to get past it from 2nd Street to go to Cascade. That would be a concern in the future. My final point is, I know when Mr. Betza was talking about the conditional use permit, one of the things he mentioned was scale of the neighborhood. It's an old neighborhood. I have to tell you, the house at 947 was built by my great-grandfather, been in that neighborhood my whole life. A 3-story, 47-foot building is not really going to fit the scale of the neighborhood, in my opinion. So I thank you all for your time.
Interesting. Interesting.
Once again, if there's anyone for testimony on this item, please use the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen.
What?
If there's no other testimony, we can turn to the third and final hearing. I'll let Ms. Watson read that, but before she does, if anyone made any comments with regard to the second hearing that would apply to the third, we will keep those comments and attach them as part of the third hearing as well. So you don't need to restate what you've already stated in the second hearing. We would only be looking for new comments or new testimony. But Ms. Watson, can you read the third hearing?
Okay, a request for waterfront conditional use submitted by PE Real Estate Holdings LLC for construction of a 9-unit, 3-story multiple family dwelling located at 824, 828 West 2nd, parcel ID 4039-206 and 207. This property being located in the waterfront residential district.
We'll turn that over to Mr. Jesaway. And again, Mr. Jesaway, to the extent that anything that you indicated in the second hearing, your first, applies to this one, you can just indicate that. You don't have to restate it all.
Okay, thank you. If it's okay with you, I guess the council has seen a visual presentation of this that was provided by the planning department. Is that correct?
We
That's
saw the
correct.
diagrams. Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to have the designer and the architect of record, Brian Weber, who is here as well, just give you a verbal, the same sort of verbal description I gave you for 946 of this particular development. He happens to be here tonight, and since he is the designer and architect of record, he would be a great person to speak about it. So if Brian, if you're able to do that, if you could admit him as a speaker, that would be terrific.
I am here. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Great. So this is Brian Weber. I'm with Weber Murphy Fox Architects, located at 1330 Westlake Road here in Erie, PA. I think you have hopefully all had a chance to look at the drawings and documents that accompanied this. So I'm going to review them pretty quickly and then allow you all to ask questions so I don't take up too much of your time. If you look at the documents that were sent to you, you will see a title block at the bottom with the name of the drawing and the number that goes along with that. So what I am going to do is actually start on 01 vicinity plan, just to give you a orientation of where the building is located. This shows the building. Of course, we are talking about a 9-unit, 3-level building. It has 13 parking spaces, which is about 1.5 per unit, 1.5 parking spaces per unit. Zoning requires just 1, so we're 50% above what zoning is. And you can see it sits on West 2nd between Plum Street and Liberty Street. On the next sheet, which is 02, called Community Outreach, you can see a listing of the meetings that I was discussing earlier. Met with the community, reviewed their concerns, reviewed their issues, made a design change, reviewed the findings, and again, and you can again, and sort of the top 11 ups.
Yeah, you're starting to break up here.
You're breaking up.
I'm sorry. Can you?
Having trouble hearing you.
How about now? Can you hear me better?
You got to talk.
No, can you hear me?
You're okay now.
Okay, so I'm okay.
Yeah.
So I'm on sheet 2 now of community outreach. This shows the top 7 issues that we reviewed with the community, as well as the dates of the meetings where we reviewed the design with the community, listened to their input, made changes to the design, represented to them again. I won't go over every single issue. I think they're here for you all to read. The point here is the amount of community input that Philip wanted with this project, and we were hired to help him with. The next sheet of community outreach shows sort of the elevations of the building. There was a previous design that had been created by others. We revised that design considerably based on that community input. So you can see some elevations. And what's even most important in this, in the exhibits that are shown on page 3, community outreach, is the neighborhood context. So as you can see, we fit this building within the heights, within the size, and within the massing of the neighborhood context. That was very important. I know one of the issues that came up was a question whether a 3-story building would actually fit within this neighborhood. I think these exhibits show you that it does fit well within and even below many of the roof lines that are actually existing in this community. Moving on to the next sheets here. Hang on one second. So sheet number 4, the floor plans, this shows how the units are laid out, again, with a combination of 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom units, from about 800 square feet for a 1-bedroom, 1,000 for a 2-bedroom. So not much different than the 946 that we just reviewed. You can see on the plans that the site where the parking is located is as convenient to West 2nd as we can be without taking up more site space than we absolutely need to. Additional elevations are shown on sheet 5, showing the different materials, and then those materials explored even further on sheet 6, called building materials. So looking at that elevation, what you'll see is we're using a composite horizontal siding that's at a sort of a weathered gray with wood accents for vertical shiplap wood siding. This fits within the materials and the color palette that's within the existing neighborhood. You can see on these diagrams we've also went with what's called a salt box roof, which is a historical roof pattern, which is a variation of a gable. And this allowed us to lower the roof in order to keep the height of this building as small as possible and fits within the historical context of the neighborhood. There's a lot of other salt box roofs that are located throughout here, and they have a historic presence here within the community. Sheet 7 is the landscape plan. So you can see a lot of thought and effort was put into the landscape and how we buffer the parking, how we screen and create privacy around this building for the adjacent neighbors, how we do create that park-like atmosphere for the parking that zoning asks for. We use native plantings. I know that was a comment that was previously put in. We are using native plantings to Pennsylvania and complements the street, complements the neighborhood. The next 2 sheets, which are sheets 8 and 9, are perspectives. You can see what this project will look like from West 2nd. So sheet 8 shows a perspective view standing on West 2nd, looking at the front of the building. You can see the landscape and the screening and the way we're treating that street. So this is a very positive aesthetic impact on the neighborhood, and something that we're hoping the community should be proud of when this is complete. On sheet 9 is the perspective view from the north. So you can see it looking over the adjacent lot that's directly to the north of this, which is owned by the Port Authority and is basically an open space park lot that this looks over with views to the bluff and eventually to the bay. So I'm going to stop there for the sake of time. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to get into any more detail.
Thank you. Time to hear the other people. Mr. Betza, what do you think?
Yes, if there's anyone that wishes to offer testimony, we will accept that at this point. If they did make testimony in the prior hearing regarding development or parking in the vicinity, we can accept that and move that into this hearing as well. So we would just be looking for anything new or additional in the form of testimony, but we can accept that now.
Janet Ferguson and Attorney Greenfield.
Jim will go first.
Thank you, members of council. My name is Jim Greenfield. I'm an attorney appearing for Jan Ferguson, who's a contiguous property owner, owning the property at 107 Plum Street, which is immediately west of this property. And she's a party in opposition to this application. In its wisdom and to its everlasting credit, the city has recognized the importance of two of its greatest assets, one of which is the waterfront, and another of which is the historic neighborhoods in the vicinity of the waterfront. And tonight, you've begun the process of enhancing your protection of historic communities in Erie. And I can tell you, as someone who both lives and practices in communities with well-developed codes relating to historic protection, those types of systems work very well, and they enhance the value of housing stock in the community. The two assets, the waterfront and the historic neighborhoods, are joined in the waterfront residential district, which is created by your zoning ordinance. And the ordinance makes it clear that water access and views are themselves valuable assets that should be protected. Specifically in section 305, and Mr. Betza made reference to some of these, so I apologize to the extent that I may be repeating some of what he said, but I think it helps to consider the specific provisions. In section 305, it states that City Council, quote, is charged with considering the effect that such proposed uses will have upon the immediate neighborhood. The preservation and integrity of existing development must be carefully weighed and given priority in each decision, end of quote. And that's a section that deals generally with conditional uses. Then in section 306.40, which relates to conditional uses in the waterfront district, it says, again, a quote, the scale of exterior space is to be relative to its neighborhood, adjacent properties, buildings, access, roads and pedestrian routes, and its activity, end of quote. And that section further states, quote, careful consideration shall be given to the preservation of natural vistas and to the future development of vistas which open into undeveloped areas. Of importance is the bluff area, and to the extent feasible, bluff views shall be preserved, end of quote. These provisions place such importance on views that views are essentially raised to the level of property rights in that neighborhood. This proposal disregards the view rights of existing property owners on West 2nd and Plum Streets by obstructing their water views, which have existed in most cases for a century or more. This proposed development is out of scale with the residential development already in that neighborhood. It disrupts the integrity of existing development there. And if I may differ from Mr. Weber, who said that the parking lot as proposed here would be aesthetically positive, I can tell you that on a street where all the houses are very close to the street, the idea of having a parking lot directly on the street is not going to be an aesthetically positive feature of this development. Instead, the plan before you unfairly grants preferential treatment to a developer who wants superior views for his own tenants at the expense of the views that the existing property owners have. Some of them are going to have their views clearly blocked by this building because it will be so far off 2nd Street, more than 60 feet. And we therefore disagree with the Planning Commission's finding that this plan complies with the zoning ordinance. This developer could proceed under the zoning ordinance in a way that preserves existing views and probably would have neighborhood support. Ms. Ferguson and we believe other neighbors would support a narrower driveway than what code requires if the structure would be located on the south side of the property and would otherwise comply with setback requirements. So you already have existing driveway to some extent on the east edge of the property. What you could do is either have a single driveway of 15 or 16 feet in width, which would allow passage of cars going in opposite directions, or you could have access into the property on one side, probably the east side, and egress on the west side with driveways that are possibly 7.5 or 8 feet wide. And this would, the neighbors almost certainly would support a less odious deviation like that from the zoning ordinance. This would also allow the building proposed by the applicant to be about 55 feet wide, which is fairly similar to what the applicant proposes now. And part of that reason is that if you had the driveways on both sides of the building, driveways can be in the side yards, so they can observe side yards while having access, ingress and egress on the sides of the buildings. And if they adopted that solution, everyone's views that currently exist would be preserved. The new development would also have water views. And I certainly encourage you, if you would, to ask the applicant why this alternative was not considered, and if it was considered, why it was not found to be acceptable. I can tell you that we were present at the zoning board hearing on the setback variance. We opposed the grant of that variance, and because of errors that we believe the zoning board made, it's our intention to appeal. So I'm not going to go through the specifics of that now because I know it's not before you. But we ask that you reject this conditional use application as an overreach and as an unnecessary deviation from code requirements that will interfere with the significant property rights of neighbors in this very sensitive district. Thank you.
Ms. Ferguson?
Good evening. I have a number of comments, obviously, to add to this. We believe that some of the people in the government here have been pushing hard to get this project approved, which is really not in the public interest and is being motivated by self-interest and political interest. The city code and the neighbors would like the structure to comply and be located on the south side of the lot in a scale which is relative to the adjacent properties. This 60-foot proposed front setback will severely limit the existing views of our neighbors, the quality of life by limiting sunlight, fresh air, and parking on the street. Therefore, no distress exists for the developer to comply with code. Jim brought up the size of the driveway or driveways to get in and out and locate the parking lot on the north side of the property. And he is correct when he says this building as proposed is going to severely limit everyone's view of the water. However, it will greatly enhance his, which actually he has no right to. And this was all covered at the variance hearing. We were very adamant about our feelings about not only the size of the project, but the location of the project. And the location is very key to this. Hold on. actually, there was no basis for the variance to be granted. Everyone promoting the project, the developer, Dahlkemper, Frisina, Susan Day, were all people that were going to financially benefit from a yes vote. And everyone opposing was a taxpayer and a neighbor in this neighborhood, and they had no economic interest in the outcome. These opposing neighbors were sincerely concerned about the overlarge project in our area with little or no parking on the street and the way it limited our views, which is our right to continue to have. Every residence next to the project is over 100 years old, and 50% of the neighbors have had their property in family name for over 100 years. Opposition to this project is not just from neighbors, but from other interested people, both nearby and far, who realize this large project on such a small lot is just not a good fit for our area. The argument about nearby houses, which was brought up at the variance hearing, that our houses that are 100 years old are non-conforming. They were lawfully conforming when they were built, but not now, meeting dimensional zoning requirements, because that was 100 years ago. And I think the fact that zoning requirements have changed is not an excuse to allow this gross deviation from zoning protection. I'm begging the members of council to vote no, as our view is an inherent value of our property and must be preserved. I have been to all the meetings, the community meetings and the official meetings, and the neighbor objection, the main objection has been the location of this building on the property. It's not right, and the location of the building on the property is still not resolved. I think I'm staying in my 5-minute limit. We're just asking you to please vote no and think of our concerns. Thank you.
Pete Frisnia?
Frisina.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. You're not the only one that mispronounced that name. My name is Pete Frisina. I live at 334 Lincoln Avenue. I am a realtor with Agresti Real Estate. I represent the seller in this transaction. And I resent the remark by Jan Ferguson that I'm in financial gains. She was in real estate too, but apparently she must have did it for free.
Pete, be careful. We don't need to go back at each other. Let's stay with the program.
She started it.
I know.
All right. She started it. I'm calming down, honey. Thank you. In 2019, I believe it was, the City of Erie and the Chamber of Commerce put together an event called Homecoming 2019, where they had people from out of town to come in to invest money into the city. And now we have a gentleman that wants from New York City, a developer, an Erie person that wants to put millions of dollars into the Bayfront development. And I can't believe what this guy has gone through. He has followed all the zoning laws, and everybody's talking about parking. He has made the development as further to parking what the zoning called for. You can't change the rules halfway through the game. That was the rules. He followed the rules, and that's how it went. He has the parking according to the zoning laws. You don't change the zoning laws unless you go for a variance, and he doesn't need to do that because he met the laws. He is putting his own personal money into this project. You're in a neighborhood where every house down there is 100 years old. Are you supposed to duplicate what those houses are supposed to look like? He has done everything possible. He has done meetings with the neighbors. He has incorporated, he's downsized, he's got local people to do this project. And I'm sorry, I'm just fuming here.
That's all right.
He's got people that are going to be local. I don't care who owns that property. And there is no political thing involved in this thing. Everything has been above board and nothing else has been done. And so I just want to let council know that we wanted people to invest money into the city. This is it. This is a hot area to invest in. So let's get it done and quit messing around with all this petty stuff about parking, air environment. There has been, nobody has provided, Jan Ferguson, nobody has provided data to show that there's going to be air quality or sunlight. And Waterview, there's two houses to the south. It's a vacant lot. Her house, she has the best view of everybody. She blocks the house behind her. The house behind her can't see the water because her house butts right up against it. The house next door has a view of the water. The only other place is two houses behind on the south side of 2nd Street that can't see the water from there. So what Waterview house are these people, or is this project blocking? I have no idea. I was down there last Saturday. It was a beautiful sunshiny day. There was so much sun early in the morning on all the properties. And this house, you got to understand, 30 feet in front of that, from Front Street back, is Port Authority property. It's not the Dog Kemper property. So there's going to be a wide open space that goes from around 30 feet back all the way to the bayfront that is owned by the Port Authority. So that's not even going to be developed. There's no blocking the sun. There's no air quality. Show me the data. It's just ridiculous that this guy's going through all this for this development. And like he said, it's the smallest development and it's costing more money and more headaches. Let's get this done. Let's get these things built. Let's go and make this a great project for the city. Thank you.
Lori Edwards.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Hi, my name is
Hi.
Lori Edwards. I live at 111 Plum Street, Erie, PA. I want to say good evening to City Council and Mayor Schember, and thank you for letting me speak today. I want to state my opposition to this project of Mr. Jessuway, an out-of-state. This project is proposed will block my eastern view of the bay. This view was naturally established over 100 years ago when my grandparents, Alexander Thompson Sr. and Lydia Thompson, immigrants from Finland, broke ground to build the home I live in now. During the November 2020 Our West Bayfront meeting, Mr. Jessuway stated that anyone who originally has a view has a right to their view, that no one can take that away. I went away from that meeting confident that he was good on his word. Plus, backing up the ordinance 306.40 that states all natural vistas will be preserved. And, you know, my house has been here since day one.
That's a natural vista. After reviewing the revised plan of his project, the placement of his massive structure will entirely block my eastern view. I placed a call and an email to Brian Weber, the architect, concerning this view blockage, and never received an answer. Is Mr. Jessuway a man of his word? In my opinion, no. The statement about the right to a view seems only to apply to his project. Considering the neighborhood as a whole, numerous residents have voiced their opposition to this project during the variance hearings. It can be seen that the only people who appear to approve of this project are the realtor, the principal realtor, and the owner of the property, who has not ever lived here. Also, it is not a conflict of interest to have a member of the Planning Commission be the property owner of this project. One of the biggest concerns of nearby residents is the parking. The parking in the area, as it is at its peak, where there really isn't much more than there are for themselves and, you know, the duplex and single family homes we have here that are existing. We were once told not to keep bringing up this issue because it was redundant. However, this redundancy should be looked at as being a very important concern instead of a repetitive nuisance. And maybe the opportunity to revisit the zoning concerning parking and how this ordinances do not fit our neighborhood. I plead with the council to please vote no on this project, for it is not in any way a good fit for us due to its invasive nature and is not harmonious with our historic neighborhood in design, size, and placement on the site. And may I requote Mr. Jessuway earlier when he said, "My goal is to make money." So his concern is really not with our neighborhood. His concern is, and neither are the property owners, because then they would understand, we would like to see development there. We would like to see something, but not something so invasive on our existing life. And I appreciate your time for letting me talk. That is it.
Thank you. Frank, any more?
Robert Sprickman.
Hi, I did speak for a moment about the property at 946, but I live at 111 Plum, and this project is right outside my window. I won't go into all of the issues that other people have spoken about, but I would urge the council members. By the way, I would like to thank the 3 people that got back to me. I called all of you, and I appreciate the fact that I got phone calls back, or that, you know, Jim answered his phone. If you look at the pictures of their sketch, this building is going to, I don't know construction techniques, but it looks like it would have to be shoehorned with some kind of lubricant to get it in here. It is out of scope. And if you look at some of the drawings that you've been given, or if you go back to the drawings from the zoning exhibit on August 12th, click on the one with exhibits and you'll see these pictures. It's not in a scale appropriate with the other buildings here. And it will indeed, if you look at the pictures from Second Street where they show you the parking lot with all the plantings and everything, it's huge, and it's like the beast that ate Chicago or whatever. Parking is a circus here, particularly with the snow, but it's almost like you have to be a lottery winner to have your preference on where you're going to park. And I've been full of anxiety, and I almost gave up after the zoning meetings. I'm pleased that you're having this meeting, and I sure hope that you stew over it and speak with each other and mull it over and realize that it doesn't belong here. Thank you very much.
Frank, how we doing here?
I had a technical issue on my end, actually. Susan Day.
Yes, good evening, Council and Mayor Schember. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I am the realtor representing Philip Jesaway. So the comment about financial gain, I guess I could possibly say partly, not that that's why I'm supportive of it, but but I am in support of it because of the excitement for Erie, for Erie to have some development. When when I met Philip and he told me, what he does, and I led him to a couple properties, and I just think it's very exciting for Erie to have something new, something to offer the such as this in Erie, Pennsylvania. So that is why I'm in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else?
Thanks, Ed. Susan, you put your hand up. I'll bring you in the room just in case you missed something you wanted to say, or.
No, I'm sorry. What are you saying? I'm sorry.
Oh, you had put your hand up. I wasn't sure if you had further.
Oh no, I was looking for the unmute because I wasn't sure if I was unmuted. Sorry.
Oh, not a worry. Donald Calabrese. Donald, your version of Zoom is a little older, so I have to bring you in as a panelist. So you will be on video for a moment.
Mr. Calabrese, you're muted.
How's that?
We can hear you.
Okay. Yes, I live at 820 West 2nd Street with my son, Donald Jr. His grandfather built this house in 1915. His grandfather lived here, his grandmother lived here, his aunts lived here. His mother's now the current owner. So he will someday be the owner of this house. So we've been in the family, the place has been in the family for 105 years. And it's always been a very nice neighborhood setting. And we're not against development. Before, there were two houses to the west of us, very similar to the house that we live in. House that Mr. Jesaway wants to build just doesn't fit in. We did an informal survey through the neighborhood, my son and I. We talked to all the neighbors. Only one person is in favor. He's been on record, but no one really wants this project the way it exists. And as far as Mr. Jesaway keeps referring to as a lake view, there's no lake view if you're standing on, if you're down on the bayfront, there's no lake view. But I think at one point there was a survey done on the bluff by the Port Authority, and the Port Authority said that whatever is there, weeds, trees, will remain. It's a no mow, no cut area, and those trees are just going to grow up, up and up, and there's no view now. So that's all I have to say. I think that many of the people that did speak to this were 3%ers, 6%ers, 10%ers, and who knows? They were all in it to make money. I'm for making money, but they didn't talk to people like we did. We talked to everyone in the neighborhood, door to door, even people that walk down the street, walking their dogs, walking on Front Street. They say no. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
Yes.
is there a list of residents that have been spoken to about this project that we can see?
Frank, can you answer that? Mr. Stramella, you there?
As in, like, who has spoken tonight?
No. I'm assuming that you went door to door, you sent emails, you sent US mails about your projects to the folks in the neighborhood. Do you have a list of those folks you have contacted?
Mr. Jesaway, I believe that question is to you.
Or Mr. Welsh?
So we spoke with neighbors through a community meeting. So Mr. Brian Weber, had meetings with certain groups of neighborhood residents, probably a dozen of them. And I don't know that he brought a list with him of all those people to the meeting. So I think he can respond to that directly. But we used a community meeting format through the Bay and Harbor Neighborhood Association. And we went to 2 separate meetings of that community group, which are advertised and which basically contains this area. We also were informed that the West Bayfront Neighborhood Association, which includes some folks further back, and Gannon and some other commercial constituents attended those meetings as well. So we did not go door to door. We held meetings through the community organizer, and we were put in touch with neighbors who had concern through the neighborhood organizers, and held meetings with them based on those contacts.
Okay, so there was no sign-in sheet at these meetings.
You know, I can ask the Bay and Harbor if there's a list of members, if they have a sign-in sheet at their meeting. I don't recall, to be honest with you.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you.
Frank, is there anyone else that has raised their hand?
Yep, Carrie DeChurch.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. So I live at 108 Plum Street. I'm kind of directly across the street from the building that's going to be built. And I do want to say we did meet with Brian Weber on the property, and that was as a result of the first variance being denied. So the meeting was kind of a forced meeting. We relied on seeing the sign to be aware of the situation. And I thought we were pretty clear that we were not opposed to an apartment complex being built. We only have issue with the size. What we had conveyed to Brian was something more on the lines that can be found at Second and Liberty. Something that's not going to obstruct people's views, something more in line with the neighborhood and the scope and the size of the houses. So I don't want to kind of reiterate what everybody else said, but I just kind of wanted to make those couple points. So we are not opposed to building. We just don't want to see that big of a building squeezed into that small lot. Imagine living at 111 Plum and looking out your window to a 3-story building every day instead of seeing a view of the bayfront. So that is all. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this topic? Please use the raise hand button.
Frank, excuse me,
Yes.
according to the chat, I think Freda may want to speak, or was that an old chat? I don't know if she's on here or not.
The last comment I got from Freda was at 9:45. I'm not sure if she's still in the group here. She's still in the group. I'll bring her in. Oops. Wrong person. Freda, would you like to provide comment?
She indicated that she spoke.
And I have Lori Edwards. I'm not sure if she spoke on this or not. Kind of losing track of people here.
Hi, I already spoke, but I just wanted to add one more thing. And the whole concept of this project, you know, it's great that there's development here. I mean, we don't need 2 empty lots, but you got to look at the ordinance that says harmonious. And, you know, you may look at it as a figurative sense and a money sense, but you got to look at the spirit of of our neighborhood. Our spirit says, please don't do this way. You know, we welcome, you know, neighbors and whatnot, but this is not a neighbor thing. This is like an invasion. It doesn't even fit. And the one word I want you to think about, please, is when you make your decision, is the harmony that it will or will not create. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Mr. Betza, I believe that's it.
With that, thank you, everyone. We will close the public hearing. Council will take the testimony under advisement, and they will take action at a future time. But thank you. With that, we will close the 3 public hearings, and we will resume with the council meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Betza. Lori, you're on, I guess, huh?
We have ordinances for final passage. Council file number 16197, official file ordinance 2/2021, appropriating the sum of $14,500 from unappropriated and anticipated revenue and providing for the expenditure thereof. This is from the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission. Sponsored by Mr. Brzezinski, seconded by Mrs. Schaaf. The council file ordinance 16197, and now known as official file ordinance 2/2021, be finally passed by City Council. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Schaaf, Mr. Winarski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Brzezinski. Council officially passed file ordinance 2/2021 by yeas 7, nays 0. Council file number 16198, official file ordinance 3/2021, appropriating the sum of $786,470 from unappropriated anticipated revenue to be received from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, for the following CDBG CARES CD19 projects. Sponsored by Mrs. Schaaf, seconded by Mr. Brzezinski. The council file number 3/2021, and now known as official file ordinance 3/2021, be finally passed by City Council. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Schaaf, Mr. Winarski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Brzezinski. City Council passed official file ordinance 3/2021 by yeas 7, nays 0. Ordinances for first reading. Council file number 16199, An ordinance appropriating the sum of $336,500 from unappropriated anticipated revenue to provide for the expenditure thereof for the construction of downtown Erie, PA Stormwater Green Infrastructure Project, U.S. EPA Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, grant number 00E02812. Sponsored by Mr. Witherspoon, seconded by Mrs. Shaw. The council file ordinance number 16-199 having been read is hereby adopted on first reading by City Council. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Key, Mrs. Shaw, Mr. Winarski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Brzezinski. City Council read and adopt council file ordinance 16-199 by yeas 7, nays 0. Council file number 16-200, an ordinance appropriating the sum of $250,000 from unappropriated anticipated revenue to provide for the expenditure thereof the construction of downtown streetscape improvements, ECRA Mission Main Street. Sponsored by Mr. Witherspoon, seconded by Mrs. Shaw. The council file ordinance number 16-200, having been read, is hereby adopted on first reading by City Council. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Shaw, Mr. Winarski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Brzezinski. Council has read and adopted council file ordinance 16,200 by yeas 7, nays 0 on first reading. Council file number 16-201, an ordinance appropriating the sum of $73,000 from unappropriated and anticipated revenue to provide for the expenditure thereof for the construction of Perry Square electrical improvements, Perry Square Alliance. Motion by Mr. Witherspoon, seconded by Mrs. Shaw. The council file ordinance 16-201, having been read, is hereby adopted on first reading by City Council. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Shaw, Mr. Winarski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Brzezinski. Council read and adopt file ordinance 16-201 by yeas 7, nays 0 on first reading. Council file number 16-202, an ordinance appropriating the sum of $15,000 to be received from the National League of Cities Institute. This grant is made available through the City Innovation Ecosystems Program with the purpose of providing support in the implementation of the Kiva Commitment, which is a local platform for micro-lending to serve potential entrepreneurs without access to traditional finance. Sponsored by Mrs. Shaw, seconded by Ms. Allen. The council file number 16-202, having been read, is hereby adopted on first reading by City Council. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Shaw, Mr. Winarski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Brzezinski. City Council read and adopt council file ordinance 16-202 by yeas 7, nays 0 on first reading. This takes us to new business.
Mr. President, called to move the balance of the agenda.
Wrong.
Can I get a second?
Something wrong. Sound like you're playing a guitar.
Ed, you're muted.
I'm muted again.
Yeah, I'll give a second.
Okay. Any separations?
I would like to separate the new business just to make sure nobody has any questions on number 1.
Okay, so only number 1?
Yes.
Okay. Any others?
Mr. Brzezinski, if you'd separate number 2 under new business.
Okay.
Not saying we even have to discuss it, just to so it's mentioned for the record, please.
Okay. Ms.
Any other
Watson?
separations?
That's it, I think.
Moving the balance of the agenda, Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Shaw, Mr. Winarski, Mr. Witherspoon, and Mr. Brzezinski. Okay. Number 1 under new business is a resolution sponsored by Mrs. Shaw, seconded by Ms. Allen. It is proposed to the city taxpayers for the year 2021 that the property tax at 2% discount will be satisfied if paid on or before April 30th, 2021. Tax at face amount will be satisfied if paid on or before July 31st, and tax at 10% penalty will occur if paid on or after August 1st. We, as a council, realize these are unprecedented times. This will provide a small assistance to our tax-paying citizens for the 2021 year and enable them the incentive of paying earlier than later. This resolution comes after much discussion and evaluation of our finances. We, as a council, affirm that these are difficult times and we do not know what 2021 will bring, but we do know that we as a governing council body need to continue to pay the bills of the city and continue to have services for our citizens of Erie, PA. Discussion?
Do we have any discussion?
Ms. Shaw? Oh, all right.
I just wanted to make sure everything was okay. Thank you.
No other discussion?
I guess we vote.
Voting on the resolution, Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Shaw, Mr. Winarski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Brzezinski.
Yes.
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 Motion passes 7 yeas, nays 0. Okay, we have a resolution sponsored by Mr. Witherspoon, seconded by Mr. Brzezinski, that the proper city officials are authorized and directed to designate West 36th Street between State Street and Beach Avenue as Gary Drapcho Way in honor of his service and dedication and continued support to the sports community of the city of Erie. Discussion?
Mr. Witherspoon?
I spoke on that in the
Caucus.
caucus. I don't have anything else to say.
Perfect.
Okay, voting on the resolution, Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Shaw, Mr. Winarski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Brzezinski. Resolution passes 7 yeas, nays 0. Okay, I think
Okay,
this goes to committee reports.
Committee reports. Do we go to the mayor first or committees first?
Committees first.
Committees first. Okay. Alphabetical order. Miss Ellen?
Last Thursday, I spoke at the Jefferson Educational Society Leadership Academy cohort. I've been, I think it's probably the 3rd or 4th year in a row that I've spoken to the Leadership Academy. And these are people generally under 40 who are learning about Erie and how they can contribute. And each year, the Leadership Academy comes up with a project. And I know Kathy and some of I think Mel have probably gone to the Jefferson to hear some of the reports on what the Leadership Academy cohorts have come up with. But I was thinking it would probably be nice to actually have the Jefferson forward all those reports to City Council so we can take a look at what some of the young leaders in our community have researched and advocated for. I know that they've done research on how to reduce poverty and the blue economy. This year's Leadership Academy is working on finding ways to help small business weather the pandemic. And so they came up with a speaker series. Now, I think 2 of the speaker series have already taken place, including one tonight, making the pivot to new models of service. But there are 2 more sessions coming up. January 26th, strategies for de-escalation and improving mental health, and February 2nd, small business resilience toolkit. So you can find out more information about that. They're on the Jefferson Facebook Live page, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. I wanted to remind citizens to check the city's website for openings on boards and authorities. I had a suggestion. I came down to City Hall today. I came to the side door and there was a woman there wanting to find out about paying for her parking tickets. And
the employee who opened the door was rather curt to this person. I understand the difficulty that we have with because of the pandemic and everyone's trying to stay safe. I also work at the library, and we try and be very polite to citizens in explaining why they can't come in the building and keeping that social distance. But I was wondering if maybe we might be able to put some information at the door, maybe in one of those kind of drop boxes where people could take out a sheet and it would say, if you have to pay a parking ticket, you can do this, or you can drop your property taxes in the slot at the front door, or you can call the Citizen Response Center at this number. Right now, I think that most of the information is knock on the window, call this number, or, you know, call the police. I just think it would, you know, since I'm not sure when we're going to reopen, I just think it would be helpful to people. You know, this was a person who had parking tickets, had not been booted, and really wanted to know how much she owed and how she could, somebody who wanted to pay, we ought to be welcoming them. My last thing is that I listened to a Catholic prayer service last night, pre-inaugural service, and the speaker was Father Brian Massengale. He's a Black Jesuit at Fordham University. And he stressed that when we say the Pledge of Allegiance, that liberty and justice for all means all, no fine print, what he said. And it really struck home to me that we say the pledge, you know, before every council meeting. So I think, you know, we've created our list of goals for the year. We're going to start talking about those, or try to synthesize what we want to achieve at an upcoming study session, which we hope to be able to move to the Tuesdays before city council meetings, so we can really get a handle on agenda items coming up. And so I hope that liberty and justice for all is an overarching goal that we can bring to the overall priorities that we put on city council. And I didn't have this on my original list, but I did want to make a point again about, I'm sorry, about the Harbor Creek. Harbor Creek uses state police service. We are all state taxpayers. We pay for that police protection in Harbor Creek. In the city of Erie, we have a paid police department. We have a paid fire bureau, which offers mutual assistance to the surrounding municipalities. And, you know, when somebody from the suburbs comes to the podium and continues to lash out at city council and at the administration about our finances, I really think that we have to stand up for what the city provides, including all the amenities, which obviously people spoke about tonight when they were talking about living on the West Bay front. There's a reason why we choose to live in the city, and there's a reason why we are, you know, we pay for that privilege and for the access, and, you know, we pay for a paid police department and paid firefighters. So I have no qualms about sticking up for city living and reminding those from outlying areas that they're getting away without having to pay, for the most part, for public safety. That's all.
Thanks. Little question, would we have Maz Saylor put that sheet out that you talked about?
Mass is really good. I know Kathy Shaw said that he's been overwhelmed a lot by a lot of questions, but I think that would be a good start. It might make his life even easier. And I know, you know, we have stuff on the website, but this woman showed up with her phone, and, you know, it was a cold, bitter day. So I think anything we can do to let citizens know that we are, you know, in the service business to them would be helpful. So
okay,
maybe we can ask Renee to, you know, for, you know, so late tonight, but maybe Renee can noodle it and let us know later on.
All right, good plan. Mr. Brennan?
Thank you, Mr. President. Um, Liz mentioned it earlier, but the application process for the authorities, boards, and commissions has been extended to the 25th. So if, to be considered, and if you have any questions, please complete the resume or go to the website. Or if there's any questions, you could always give the city a call and maybe ask a few questions. Yeah, if you go to the City Grows website, you could fill out an application. So we definitely need some good people. So please apply if you're interested or if you know somebody. Erie Parking Authority, we had I attended the board meeting yesterday. The only thing really to report is the municipal services agreement that we discussed with the city is still being discussed. There's a meeting upcoming, but I don't think a date has been set yet. So as soon as there's a date set, I'd like to attend that as the liaison and continue to be involved. So hopefully that meeting will be set up soon. Next item is I sent to council the honorary street designation process. I know I've been wanting to send that earlier, but please take a look at it again. It's a draft. I looked at several other cities, what they've done. So I'd love to get everyone's input because I think if we don't get everyone's input and sign on, that we're not going to follow it. So if we could at least, take a look at that when you get a chance. I know you get a billion emails a day, but take a look at it, the draft, and if there's any comments, we could update it and keep on, not keep on, but try to finalize it pretty quick so we could agree and move forward. And then we have a study session coming up on the 28th, January 28th at 5:30. And the topic of the study session is the Historic Preservation Task Force will present the final Historic Preservation Plan report. We'll send it, I'll send it out ahead of time to council so you can take a look at it, but essentially that'll be the agenda for the meeting that we will review and then ask questions, throughout the meeting and then maybe have a Q&A at the end. But we'll try to be, very stick to the agenda. We'll try to just get through it and inform council and get your questions answered and move forward. That's my report. Thank you.
Dave, thanks for heading that up.
Yeah, thank you.
You and Liz have done a lot of work on that already, so that'll be good.
That. Thank you, Liz.
Mr. Keys, we'll go alphabetical unless you want to wait.
I just didn't want this historic day in history to pass, that we elected our first woman vice president, first woman of color to hold that office also. And so I just wanted to make a footnote of it that that our union is becoming more perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Keys. Moving right on to Ms. Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to everyone who spoke today. Being inauguration day and everything, you could have spent the evening watching the celebrations and what have you, and you spent the time at an Erie City Council meeting. So thank you for your time and energy spent today. I listened to the zoning hearing board and listened to the presentation of the active Erie planning for the city. That was in yesterday's already Tuesday, Erie City Planning Commission meeting. I wasn't able to watch the rest of the meeting because I did have to go to work. I was on my way to work this morning. On the news, I heard that the city mission was not able to give out their bagged lunches this week due to a COVID incident, and that they won't pass them out through this week until Monday again. So I haven't heard anything other than that because I've been at work and busy with things. So I don't know if anyone's stepping up to fill them in that place. But a definite need as you drive through and see people in need. This past Sunday, I did an MLK Outreach Day of Service with Pastor Darrell Cook, County Councilman Andre Horton, and Gary Horton and Christ Community Church, the Black Caucus and Urban Erie Development Corporation with Selena King. And we passed out care bags on Sunday afternoon. I want to thank personally some girls I know, Nora and Sophie Gunter, who made 24 care bags in their home and gave them to me to pass out, and helping them with that were Hallie and Sophia Swansinger. So thank them very much. I, along with Liz and some other people, you know, we love that Bayfront area. We love to hike or walk and ride our bikes. So I am familiar with that area, and I have watched, there's a house at the end of Plum Street, and I had watched it go through renovations, and I noticed that it is quite modern, and it is quite tall. So I'm assuming that that person who owns their house had to go through zoning regulations to meet the needs of zoning to do it. It's very different and it's very unique. But it, you know, just wanted to put that out there. I really consider myself knowledgeable of that area, and I know Liz and, you know, like other people do, that is a prime area of beauty for looking at the bay. So I thank all the people who spoke. I am considerate of them, as well as the Mr. Philip, I don't know how to pronounce your name, that Gazet, for taking the time on your remodel. I have been watching that process go through, and you have, you know, like you had mentioned, anyways, had taken it apart and revamped. So anyways, I listened. Thank you very much for the people who spoke, and it's late.
Nice job. Nice job with the resolution too.
Can
Mr.
I talk-
Winarski,
Can I talk first?
who?
Me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I
didn't know
have a
you-
waive rules. I rushed through that agenda so much that I
Oh, that's
forgot I had
right.
to waive rules. It's a purchase order. The proper city officials are hereby authorized and directed to issue a purchase order to Archive Social PO Box 3330 Durham, North Carolina, to provide comprehensive social media record keeping solutions to help government agencies remain compliant with public record laws and activity management risks online, starting January 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2021 for the city of Erie at a total cost of $7,176. This was something that I think just got lost in it was on my desk today. It could have been at the mayor's office, but Andrea said that she put this in for payment. And if you vote to waive the rules, we could vote on this. So voting on waiving the rules, Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Shaw, Mr. Winarski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Brzezinski. Voting on the resolution, Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Shaw, Mr. Winarski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Brzezinski. Motion passes 7 yeas, 0 nays. Thank you.
Miss Watson, you're the best. Good job. Where were we? Mr. Winarski.
We made it easier on that to waive the rules, that's for sure, but all good. Thank you, everybody, for hanging in there tonight. A little later than normal, but the only things I have to comment on, I did get my committee assignments. A lot of them is what President Brzezinski had last year, but naturally with the Convention Center Authority, they are in a busy time with the Warner redevelopment and the Bay Ballpark improvements. Mr. Wells has kept this up to date monthly, but we will definitely get a update personally from him, or at least via the Zoom. My other appointment is the Port Authority, and naturally there's always something going on down there, as well as we will get updates through Ms. Sandberg on the happenings there. I am also a liaison to the police department. Last year, our meetings with the chief went by the wayside a little bit, whether it was partially my fault as president or COVID or what have you, but whether it be Zoom or what have you, I would definitely like to at least get a sit down with the chief, whether it be once every 3 months, every 2 months, just to get some feedback that since they've gotten the body cameras, whether it has been an asset, if it has possibly saved us any money financially by having those. How is it all working out within the last 6 months since we have had them? And just go from there with that. Naturally, we all are involved with the finance and the finance committee. Our biggest, and I won't deny it, I don't care what you say, challenge this year will be our balance of what to do with the pre-lease dollars we got through the Water Authority to the tune of roughly 88.5. And then our surprise surplus that I don't think any of us were expecting from 2020. I don't know the exact number, might have been a couple $1 million there that, will bump that water lease money closer to 90 million. So just want to make sure we do our due diligence when it comes to that. And that's going to be our key topics, I'm sure, with Ms. Shoft and our finance committee meetings, that we do the right thing there. Other than that, I see Erie Downtown Partnership. Mr. Persinger has already reached out to us. I believe we all got a letter willing to meet with us, give us an update. $100 million redevelopment going on in our downtown Erie. So that's something council wants to be a part of and be very updated on. So once again, if anything I can do on my end to the committees that I have to between them themselves as well as me, I'll do everything to keep our council abreast of any happenings or updates as they're needed. But appreciate the good meeting tonight, Mr. President, and my colleagues on council. I appreciate all the people that had their opinions. I do have the two main questions I'm going to have for that development down there. And I will get some exact numbers for the citizens and the council on after the LERTA has expired, what is the tax impact on the city itself, as well as the other main issue everybody was talking about, other than the view, was the parking, and if there's just any possibility that there could be any additional parking added into the parking lot. I'm just two of the main issues on my end, but I will follow up on those and let my colleagues know. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Jim. And Ms. Schaaf is talking to Mr. Persinger as of today, so she's going to be setting something up with the Finance Committee because we thought that'd be the best place for it to be. Am I right, Kath? Kath, you know?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
thank you. I am committed to calling him tomorrow. I really had a really busy work day and was very busy.
Oh,
I was unable to do that today,
Oh.
but I will definitely get in touch with him. Thank you.
It's not a front burner. He can live for a couple weeks. That's fine. I know you'll take care of it. Okay, moving on to Mr. Spoon.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd just like to say that I think everyone know I wasn't born and raised in Erie. I was born in a large city, which is Newark, New Jersey. But Jersey City lies between Newark, New Jersey, and New York City. I have family in Jersey City, and I have a lot of friends in Jersey City, as well as the Bronx. My point is this: Jersey City is no comparison to Erie. You cannot compare anything in Jersey City with what we do in Erie. I've been there, I live there, and I know things have changed, but not that much. Also, I agree with Councilwoman Allen, justice for all. We heard that all day long with the new president coming in, all day long. And that has a bigger meaning than just a few letters to spell justice. That goes a long way. So we need to keep that in mind when we're saying justice for all. We're going beyond the courts. We really aren't talking about the courts. We're talking about justice for all, and that's important. Mr. President, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Spoon. City Controller, Ms. Stankiewicz, you there? I don't blame you. You're probably sleeping. Renee?
I don't think Renee there. I think the mayor is here tonight.
Actually, the mayor's here tonight, actually, but I'll say hi to everybody and happy inauguration day. I'll turn it over to the
Super, man.
mayor.
All right, Mr. Mayor. He was here. He's muted. You're muted, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry about that.
There you go.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be brief. First of all, I just want to take a minute to wish a happy birthday to Frank Stramilla. Today is Frank's birthday. He does a great work for the city, and invite all of you to wish Frank a happy birthday as well.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
Second, the council briefing on staff work is in progress. Friday's at 11 right now. We do that kind of update on what's been going on in the city. We've only been getting 2 or 3 council members at meetings for the last few months here. If there's a better date and time for that meeting, if you could let us know. There's a lot of good information shared, and not too many council people are hearing it now. So just let us know that. Tomorrow's press conference, there's only three topics. It should be relatively quick, but we're going to talk about volunteer opportunities with the flagship Niagara League and the Maritime History Center. We're going to announce a restaurant week in downtown Erie, and we're going to talk about the fact that Monday, as you guys have talked about a couple times already, January 25th is the last day to apply to serve on authority boards and commissions. We're going to try to encourage people to do that. And the last thing I want to talk about is just that today was really, I feel, an incredible, great day in American history with the swearing in of Joe Biden as our president and Kamala Harris as the first woman, the first Asian, the first person of color to be sworn in as vice president of the United States. I can tell you honestly, I'm still on a high from watching that happen today. President Biden gave a very good speech, a very positive speech. I thought it was great. There are 3 points in it that really hit me. I just want to share briefly with you. First, for the next 100 days, we all really must focus our efforts towards trying to end this COVID-19 pandemic, which has taken more American lives in our country that then our country lost during 6 years of World War II. As you all think, you all know, we've lost over 400,000 Americans in less than a year. Second, we must bring our nation together by listening to and valuing everyone's position on issues. Everyone has a right to the position that they have. But my third point, no one should ever engage in any violence against another citizen because they disagree with you on an issue that we face. So thank you very much to all of you. Thanks to my team, to Renee. I really look forward to continue to work with all of you through 2021. It's way past my bedtime, so I'm going to stop there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Attorney Betza, you did a heck of a job for us already tonight.
You're far too kind. I just wanted to thank council and thank all of the speakers. 3 public hearings is a difficult task to say the least, but I think it went forward rather smoothly, and I think council got a lot of information to make an informed decision. But that's all I have. Thank you all and have a wonderful night.
Thank you, sir. Just for the record, council people send their overtime stubs to Mr. Welsh. That's a joke. Just a joke. Just a joke. But if I see him, he sends us 3 again, we're going to have a talk. It was a beautiful night. Mr. Winarski made a comment about the water money. If the general public is still listening, that's in a restricted fund. So I don't want to hear silly comments about the mayor sneaking in and taking $1 million here or $1 million there. It's not going to happen unless all of us know about it. Okay? Having said that, anything else for the good of the order? If not, say good night.
So moved, Mr. President.
City Council adjourns at 10:43 p.m.
Good night.
Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Schaaf, Mr. Winarski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Brzezinski.
Happy birthday, Frank. Stolat, Stolat.
Thank you, everybody. Nice meeting.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
How come I
Good night.